Okay, so I guess we should get started. So first of all, let me know if you can hear me, and then I'll bring up the preview and we can get started. I think there is going to be quite a bit to discuss. I don't. We'll see if I'll go through it fully, like line by line right now, but we'll see. Okay, people can hear me, so I will switch to this. Okay, so here we go. So yeah, for anyone who doesn't have it up already, this is the Amazon.com, so Amazon America preview. Just go to Amazon.com, find Reckoning of Roku, and you should just be able to click underneath the picture of the cover, and it says read sample. It'll bring up this, and you should get a sample. I'm guessing there probably is some variety because, at least for me, when I found this earlier on, it gave me what I assume most people have, which is effectively the first 4 chapters of the book, roughly up to page 45, or I think just a bit afterwards. But then, earlier on, it also gave me literally the final chapter of the book. It gave me the epilogue chapter. I don't seem to have access to that anymore, so I'm not sure if that's just they switched it pretty early on or not. We'll have to see what's going on there. And at least for me right now, it has taken out, I'd say, 2 or 3 pages in the middle of these chapters as well. So we'll see what you guys have compared to what I have, but I'm guessing it should be mostly the same. The other thing we have access to is the search bar. Even though it's not going to show us everything from the book, it will tell us about how many times certain things appear in the book, of course. So for instance, if we do this, you can see Zito is mentioned within the previews that we have access to on these pages, but then also in the pages that we don't have access to, he is mentioned a few more times. So we can use this to figure out some stuff potentially as well. That there's that. But like I said, this is the prologue, and I think chapter 1, 2, and 3. Maybe one of the pages I'm missing is them starting up another chapter, but I'm pretty sure it is just the opening 4 chapters of the book. I would say broadly, it's taken me from... I'm excited for the book because I'm always excited for a new novel, and it's the first new content of the year. Significant content of the year. After this preview, I'm honestly actually really interested in the kind of core plot. Whereas if you saw my preview video that I think I put out yesterday, you'll note that there kind of wasn't too much to talk about in terms of the actual plot. Whereas I think there's maybe a bit more to talk about coming off this stuff, definitely. So let's get into it. What we get immediately is that the prologue is where the audio preview comes from. Now, the audio preview is like a certain section of the prologue. We know that the Screen Rant article is chapter 1, and then we don't have preview material pretty much after that point for the most part. So let's get into this here. So, of course, it's the Sozin POV here, and then interestingly, it seems like the 3rd chapter is also Sozin POV, and based on what I think what else I've seen, it seems like he has a significant amount of chapters in the book, but I don't know the full scope of that. But anyway, we have here Sozin. Of course, this is in between kind of the discovery of Sozin as Roku as the Avatar, and then the scene that we see in 306. Like I said, it's from the audio excerpt, but we get the kind of build up to it ultimately. So Sozin doesn't like parties, of course. And yeah, they have their new avatar. And it's an interesting thing here, just highlighting this point of like, you know, the Fire Nation had its first avatar in centuries, which is like, it's always going to be the case for the most part anyway. But because Kyoshi lived so long, it's even longer for them to get around to them having an avatar again. So that is interesting. We get here's the text of the parents of Sozin. So Firelord Taiso, as I called in my video, it is spelled Taiso. And then I guess his mother, Lady Haze, I'm not really sure. But that's interesting. Get the name of the mother. We're seated at it. His sister, Princess Zaysan, stood at the edge of the Turtle Duck Pond. And I think this is where the audio preview starts. And we get this whole thing here. And we get this character, I think, introduced properly later on in chapter 3. We'll get to it. And then, yeah, we've already seen this stuff, so I'm going to scroll through this relatively quickly. The key points in the middle of all of this is obviously the idea that Taiso is disappointed that Sozin hasn't ended up being the Avatar. So that is an interesting point. And that, yeah, tend to your friendship like a fire, learn to bend it to your will. So the idea is you're already friends with him, but be better friends, because we need this kind of political connection. So basically manipulate the friendship is what his father is telling him. But he doesn't want to do that because, and this is a really interesting point, Roku was his only true remaining friend, and true friends didn't manipulate each other. So there's still good in this Sozin, as we see here. And I suppose the whole point of the book is that we're going to see this real transition in a way of Roku becoming more confident and like the Avatar we know he goes on to become, and then Sozin becoming more of the cruel Fire Lord, of course. So that's kind of interesting. And yeah, the Ta Min reference here is kind of nice. They begin to talk. They're on the roof at this point. And yeah, we get the joke about, oh, it'd be a shame if you fell off the roof, of course. And I think this is where the audio preview ends. So there's that. Did I read the epilogue? I did, but without context, it was very hard to tell. I won't give any spoilers for what happens in the epilogue, because it's so incredibly out of context. But yeah, earlier on, I was able to read the epilogue from this. But anyway, so yeah, we have the whole thing. They have a little bit of a kind of fake fight. And interestingly, yeah, Roku nearly falls off the roof. Sozin saves him. And this is obviously meant to be a reference to their sparring that we saw in 306. Like when Roku falls over the tree root and Roku kind of saves him from actually hitting the ground properly. I guess that happens basically again. And so they laugh, and we get them actually talking about things of like, yeah, I never thought it would be me. We all knew it was going to be someone from our year, our nation, but still, it's not like anyone actually thinks it's going to be them. But of course, Sozin really wanted it to be him. That's interesting. So I'd love to know the planning on this. So does this mean that, like, yeah, because there's no way to properly plan this. It's just like, yeah, because like I guess it has to be the idea how, like, it all depends on like how instantaneous it is. Like, is it literally the case Kyoshi dies, Fire Nation child is born like within seconds, and that's the Avatar? So there's no real way to properly plan for this as such. Especially with like Kyoshi, where like you would never know, like, I suppose, when she was actually going to die. So it's just interesting. But anyway, yeah, calls him Avatar Roku, of course. And of course, Roku doesn't want this, is realistically the idea, whereas Sozin really does want this, but he's not the Avatar. And Sozin gives him, like, oh, look at all the experiences, all the techniques you're going to learn, but it's all about, like, you know, you're going to have to fight battles. Roku doesn't want to fight these battles. He just wants to kind of stay here. And the ultimate point in this is realistically that both of them do just want to keep their friend. Like, it would be simpler if they were just able to remain friends, and in a way, if they weren't the prince, if they weren't the Avatar, it would be simpler and things would go a very different way, is the point. So interesting. So yeah, is it so bad to crave a simple life? It is when you're destined for greatness. I don't care about greatness. And yes, the lack of ambition from Roku here, which I think is pretty clear. And then yeah, what if I can't do it? What do you mean? You'll be great. And then, really interesting point here. If this is because of your brother, and they avoid talking about it. So we know, we saw it in the chapter 1 preview, that the idea that the family has sons, as in Roku has at least a brother. So now we get I suppose, the reveal that I guess it is just one brother. At least I think right now that's what we have to go on. So something, I guess, has happened to his brother. I think we find out some of the details. I might be forgetting some of the exact details. I'm pretty sure we find out the name of the brother. I think from context we can piece it together, but we'll see when we get there, obviously. But that's an interesting point. Something's happened that Sozin views as having a big kind of character change, kind of be put upon Roku because of this. It's not, if you say so. How do you do it? And it's the idea of, well, I'm now in a really tough position. How do you deal with your expectations of it? And so on. Let's see. Who said I'm not scared? So you are, all the time. How do you deal with it? Pretend I'm not. You should learn to do the same. And it works. If my closest friend in the world couldn't tell, then it appears so. And that's an interesting point. Fireworks continue to go off, of course. What else do we have here? Again, I've read through this once before, but like the details, I definitely need to read through it again to find them. Let's see. Clapping died down. We should get back. Before your father executes the panicked servants he probably tasked to find us, if only that were a joke. And they do treat it as being kind of quite serious, so that's an interesting one. I'll let you pack. I'll stop by your room to say a proper goodbye. Spirits know we won't get the chance to in the morning during the spectacle of the Avatar's official departure. Of course, my prince. And he nearly falls off the roof again. So clumsy Roku a little bit is in play here. Zito's marked because I guess I have my search still on for Zito. But anyway, next morning it's the big send off. So they basically skip over the scene that's in the show, but we'll reference it shortly. This is the scene where he gives him the Crown Prince artifact, as we'll find out. Historic moment, first fire avatar since Zito to depart for the training, of course. Everyone's here, the family. His teacher, of course, who we know who that is, of course. Let's see. Fire sages, that's nice to know. They're still around, but I guess it is, I think in the lore, it's like what Sozin is the one to properly change the whole thing with the fire sages, whereas they're still in their proper role, realistically, here, the fire sages, I guess. But that is much older lore, so I wonder if that's still valid. But anyway. Palace. So, okay, Roku's struggling to get through one of these scenes. Really not confident at all. He was afraid throughout the whole thing. And that makes, I think, complete sense. Like, all of a sudden, within, I guess, a couple of days, he's just been like, and now you have to leave and say goodbye to everyone in a super official way. You are now the Avatar. It's a massive change here. He bids farewell to Princess Zaysan. Okay, so there's the first, actually a second mention of her in the book. Sozin, of course. And then, the goodbye, the official goodbye, the reality hit. His friend was leaving. His only true friend. They've mentioned that once again. So that's interesting. Maybe Sozin would never have another friend like Roku ever again. And then Taiso steps in the way of this. What else do we have here? When Roku reached Fire Lord Taiso, it was the new Avatar who bent forward first, which obviously I guess he was not meant to do. And this is a bit of a problem, but, it's a minor thing in the grand scheme of things. It is the Avatar's sort of ceremony here, I guess, so they don't really criticize Roku too much for it. Sky Bison. He taps the golden dual-pronged headpiece that now sat atop his head, so that scene has already happened, of course. He had gifted it to him last night. And then here's the big reveal. Giving the artifact to Roku had been Fire Lord Taiso's idea. A tangible reminder of where his true loyalties should lie. Fire Lord Taiso had told Sozin. A leash, if you will. And that's a big reveal. That we have such a different view on that scene from 306 compared to what this adds onto it now, that like it wasn't actually Sozin who just did that out of the goodness of his heart representing their friendship, but like, no, this is part of the, you know, manipulate your friendship, my son, like give him this thing. And you'll note, based on like the preview for chapter 1 that we got from Screen Rant, the whole point of like, you are a spirit of no nation, yet he was just given an artifact that is basically will always kind of connect him to the Prince of the Fire Nation. And it's that kind of interesting point of their highlighting fire avatars have always had this problem. Well, I guess it makes sense with stuff like this happening all over the place. But a pretty massive reveal there, definitely. When I first read that, I was like, ooh, that's a spicy reveal there on the such a significant like item in the world of Avatar. Yeah, he's felt a pang of guilt, so he knows that this was a bit of a guilty thing to him, but it still represents kind of both sides of things. That, like, ultimately we know, I guess, Roku goes on to not become an avatar known for being loyal excessively towards the Fire Nation. So how well does it work as a leash? We obviously know it doesn't actually play out in the way that we think it does, which is an interesting point to it as well. So yeah, they head off. His friend was gone, off to become the Avatar. He goes off by himself, of course, and away from everyone. You know, the mask crumbles. Let's see here. And it's the idea of, yeah, like, I suppose he can get anyone to be his friend if he wants to be, but is it a true friend? The only person in this world who could be completely honest now he was alone. And here's where we get the big tagline for the book that's like over the back cover. Curse the fire sages who spoke the unwelcome announcement. Curse the air nomad for requiring Roku to move to their temple. Curse a world that provided such friends only to snatch them away. So we know, I guess, that's Sozin's view on the situation more so than Roku's, which I guess is one way to confirm to us that, okay, the Sozin perspective is super important in this book as well. So there we go. Roku was right. It should not have been him. So Sozin agreeing with that. And then we go into this. Now, I'm not really going to focus too much on this because I'm pretty sure this is just the preview chapter from Screen Rant. And I'm pretty sure that there's no extra stuff. They didn't skip over everything. This is just the chapter that we got from before. With all the stuff that we know and we discussed on like the last thing overall. Do I think I suppose the thing with the Crown Prince artifact is a retcon? It's not a retcon because it changes our perception of things, but it doesn't actually change any of like the details of it necessarily. It just is like, oh, we now view it in a slightly different way. So I get how like subtly it's a retcon in a way, but it's also not really. Ultimately, it's a weird one, because like it's not like there's no like contradiction, I suppose, as such between what happens here and here. It's just that like here's the truth of the matter, which is the same as like, you know, past history being gradually revealed and stuff like that. So there's that. And we go through all of this stuff, as we know before. Nothing else really to focus on here. Obviously, it's interesting with the potential thing about like something happened to his brother. It probably with the chapter 1 information lets you maybe know that whatever the issue is with open water, I'm guessing that's maybe how the brother was lost, and that's the situation there. And that explains Roku's kind of reluctance to walk into open water, swim, that sort of thing. But why he's not like afraid of water just in general. Here's a few more Zito references, of course, but like I said, we've seen this before. So then we go into the next chapter, which is chapter 2, the overall third chapter of the book, because it's a prologue, The Letting Go. So we continue with Roku. It's the next chapter that switches over to Sozin. Um, we're on this village that they're kind of helping to repair in the aftermath of a big storm, and this is the sort of goodbye ceremony with the Avatar. Of course, they're heading back to the Southern Air Temple, and Roku basically has to give a speech. But we find out here he has lied, like, "Oh, I'm just going to meditate," but he's basically just trying to avoid having to give the speech. Nice world building thing here, Kyoshi connection. We got the reference of the lives of the Avatar in the previous chapter, but now we find out it's written by Jinpa. So I guess it's a somewhat recent book, but I suppose with how long Kyoshi lives, technically it's over 100 years old or something like that. Probably well over 100 years old, but still, Jinpa's The Lives of the Avatar is the book that Roku is reading. And here is some reference, and as I was reading through this, I'm like, name a new avatar, name a new avatar. I don't believe they do, if I remember correctly, so that's interesting. But anyway, they just covered the idea of like Roku comparing his own discovery as the Avatar to what is written in the book about how other avatars were discovered. So there's an interesting detail about Zito here. Some, like Zito and Yang Chen, were discovered early and indisputably when they bent a second element or exhibited one of the other avatar's spiritual gifts. So I guess we learned that Zito is another example of an avatar who doesn't just start the training at 16, but I guess is probably discovered at like somewhere in the region of 8 to 12. Get started on their training quite early, and so is able to be very active as an avatar from a very early point. So that's interesting. Others like Kurok were identified by their nation's spiritual leaders, who only announced the avatar's identity when they came of age. Of course, we saw that in the flashback in Shadow of Kyoshi. Something about crystals, I guess, is the water tribe method of discovering the avatar, though that's not really detailed very well. Story of Roku's predecessor. So they give a little bit of a Kyoshi recap here. It mentions Yoon, Yoon's maid Kyoshi. She would go on to become one of the greatest avatars in history, living for over 200 years, while Yoon would go on to be forever known as the false avatar who descended into madness. So that's interesting stuff. That's the history lesson there. Since the moment of the Fire Sage's announcement, Roku wondered if they'd gotten it wrong. Perhaps it was supposed to be his brother, or Sozin. They'd all been... Oh, that's interesting. I actually didn't catch that the first time I read through this. So he has a twin brother, I guess, is the idea there. His brother or Sozin, so all three of them were born on the same day. So that's crazy. The twin avatar thing, they basically did it here, but I guess the brother was lost at an earlier point. So that's kind of crazy that they're doing that already here. Not in the way you think. So that's that. Perhaps what happened with Yoon and Kyoshi was a symptom of growing disconnect between the human realm and the spirit realm, and Roku was another false avatar. The Fire Sages scoffed at the idea that maybe I'm not the Avatar. The Earth Kingdom's failings reflected their leader's corruption and spiritual shortcomings, they assured him. The Fire Nation method... Okay, so here's the Fire Nation method for discovering avatars, which involved burning inscribed bones and reading the resulting fissures, was pure and infallible. So again, sort of like an aspect of the Earth Kingdom method, it's like, what do you mean by that? So they inscribe bones, they then burn them, and the way in which you interpret them, the cracks, I guess, that form, tells you who the avatar is, who it is. Like, is this Roku burning a bone, and they know from, like, his own firebending, like, burning that bone that, like, oh, this is the avatar pattern. They could be a little bit more specific here. But anyway, that's interesting. Despite the fact that Roku is already an accomplished firebender. So here's the reveal here that I was looking for. It's like, is Roku just a okay firebender, or is he a master? And I guess we get the confirmation here he is a master. Second in their class only to Sozin. So that's good to know. I'm guessing that means that either the brother wasn't a firebender or was always below Roku at firebending, and I wonder what dynamic that actually means. But still, Roku is meant to be a top class firebender here. Given that Sozin is basically a prodigy, like really high level prodigy, this speaks quite well of Roku's skill, even though I guess he's a bit clumsy. Is the one maybe failing that maybe doesn't make him come across with the confidence of a master bender. Besides failed attempts to bend the other elements, he was alone. He tried in vain to commune with the spirit world or connect with the past lives. Okay. Determined to try again. Let the fire in his palm burn. So this is him trying to do like air bending, I guess. Yeah. He blew the air out through his mouth in a long, forceful exhale. The leaf didn't stir. Careful, I don't think the village will survive another typhoon. And this is the introduction of Monk Gyatso. Or just young Gyatso here. So, smirking air nomad, leaning on his staff, the pale, bald-headed boy had a sleepy-eyed look and was short and scrawny. He didn't have his arrows yet, which wasn't a surprise given that he seemed at least a couple of years younger than Roku. So, that's interesting, just that we have there. I'm guessing if Roku's 16, I'm guessing we're dealing with what that would probably have to be 12, 13, 14-year-old Gyatso here. He knew the kid's name was Gyatso. They'd never really had a conversation. And this is an interesting point about the characterization of Gyatso, which I was a little bit stumped on what exactly they were going to do in my speculation. But here is the angle. Both of them are going to have some sort of a trouble when it comes to airbending. So Gyatso had been having trouble airbending, but as we'll get to, it's less that he's never airbent before, but that he had been on a good trajectory, but something has now completely like almost blocked his bending almost entirely. So that's going to be an interesting one to see. Sister Daisha had taken a special interest in trying to help him. Special interest that probably should have been reserved for the Avatar. So that's an interesting point here. And I don't think there's anything to back this up, but I'm kind of like, should we read into this? Like, are we meant to maybe assume that is Sister Daisha perhaps actually Gyatso's mother? But that's just a speculation. I don't think the material anyway in any way confirms or suggests that. Want to show me how it's done? Rubbing salt in the wound. Sister Daisha told me that you don't have to give that speech anymore. Really? Not really, you do, and it's time. I hope it's better than the last one you gave. At least try to pronounce this village's name correctly. So that's interesting. It was really cold last time, and water tribe names are hard to pronounce. So I guess they've been to a water tribe place, and it makes sense. Some of the names, like some of the ones in the RPG, I'm lost on the pronunciation of. Let's see, for some people, but you do know the name, don't you? And then Roku says, so I heard your airbending just stopped working for no reason. There is a reason, and that reason is you wouldn't understand. Why not? You're a spoiled brat from the Fire Nation. Hey, I thought air nomads were supposed to be all nice and gentle. My airbending didn't completely stop working, only sometimes. So that's like, oh, what is this? That's interesting. Because like we've had examples of this before. Like, obviously, like there's the really obvious one of like Zuko, after he joins Team Avatar, and like the what is the fuel for his firebending, that's a point. There's Kyoshi's mother, who had a spiritual taint on her bending because she obviously went down such a different path from your typical airbender. What's going to be the thing with Gyatso here? Because we have no obvious foundation in, like, I suppose a specific thing with Gyatso's character to, I think, even be able to speculate on what this necessarily is. But anyway, let's see. That's why I've never seen you use your glider. The last place you want your airbending to fail is hundreds of feet above the earth, of course. And then, yeah, he's going to give the speech here. And then Sister Daisha's like, hey, you are Kyoshi, you are Kuruk, you are Yangchen, you are Zito, and so on. Those are your accomplishments. And it kind of serves the reverse thing of like, that should give him confidence, but actually it's like, oh no, I'm absolutely not those people. And it's a real failed speech here. The storm tried to destroy this place. He doesn't know the village's name, or blanks on it. But it didn't, right? Working together, we rebuilt it. Pause. So I guess that shows teamwork is important. Gyatso laughs. A girl starts to speak. They're not even sure if the speech is over, and he just ends it. And it's like, oh no, you'll improve with practice. So it's a real disaster of a speech. The exact worst thing you want to see happen. Words aren't my thing. Maybe I can be the kind of avatar who speaks with his actions. All the more reason to begin my airbending training. And then she says, our breath gives life to our words as much as our actions. Let both matter. Okay. And so, yeah, we're back in the Patola mountain range here. And here we get some descriptive stuff. Let's see. Sky Bison... attachment. Gyatso's on the bison with them. So there's a specific thing here of like Daisha is like not just specifically trying to help Gyatso, but then even here makes a point of putting Gyatso like up with them as well. So it's kind of interesting. And then Amra, I guess, is the name of Daisha's bison. So another named bison is nice. Though, did we get that in the previous chapter? We probably did. I'm probably forgetting that. Let's see. Let's see, just descriptive stuff for the most part. This used to be my favorite part. So obviously because he can't consistently airbend, it's a bit of a problem. He wants to be able to do it. And I'm guessing they're really building up to the idea of like, you know, the idea of like we specifically saw in 306 Gyatso using the glider by like standing on it. So like there's a real like fun aspect to him that he wants to do stuff like that, but he can't right now. So for whatever reason, that's the situation there. In time, she consoled Gyatso. And here we go. Yeah, this is interesting, but also a bit weird, as we'll get into here. So, two of the air monks who sat on the Council of Elders, Abbot Rabten and Monk Eudron. Now, Eudron, if you saw my preview the other day, is directly from the RPG. He is said to be one of the main elders, and 12 years from now will be one of the main people in opposition to Chondro. Rabten, when I first read this, I was just like, I know that name. That name is for sure referenced in the RPG. And I looked at all the Roku RPG stuff, but the name wasn't there. Rabten is the name of the professor in Republic City from the Republic City RPG book. So there's a name reuse here that obviously has happened somewhat back to back. Because obviously we assume that this book was mostly written like more towards like last year, which was the year obviously the Korra book actually came out, where this name I suppose was first used. So two rapid fire uses of the name Rabten in the canon of Avatar, and as we'll get in the next chapter, they do the exact same thing again. They used the name of a character from the Korra era to name a character in the book. So very odd here, where like, is this purposeful or something going wrong here in a way? Are we running out of names or something? But we'll get to that in just a few chapters time. So anyway, what are we doing here? Yeah, cabbages. Daisha comes off the saddle. He hopped down as his own, bowed to the elder monks, and disappeared into the temple. Still no progress. So the high-ups know about Gyatso's problem. That's interesting. Afraid not. He thinks they might be talking about him, but no, it's actually Gyatso. And this is interesting. This is becoming a little bit of a writing thing of like the repetition of just like the curse, the something something from Sozin. This is the multiple yeses. There was a couple of lists in the previous chapter as well. I'm guessing this is just part of the writing style. I personally don't mind this because I think it's is interesting from like a character who is maybe lacking in confidence to have to like reassure themselves about all the positives here, of just like, yes, it had been instructive, humbling, yes, it felt good to help those in need, but yes, it was about helping because we're all connected and not because of the feeling helping gives us. Yes, she was an excellent teacher. Yes, he will continue to meditate. Yes, he was looking forward to a season studying and training at the temple. Yes, he was tired, and so on. I guess if that is like really heavily overused throughout the book, that could be a bit frustrating. We'll have to see, of course, across a lot more chapters. So like 2 or 3 examples of it early on. Does it tell us anything? I'm not really sure. But anyway, Roku then kind of goes off on his own. And interestingly, what we basically find out here is that Roku is not immediately given like Zito's old quarters, which we saw, I think, Yang Chen go into in some of the more recent books. They are being held from him. Daisha is just like, she insisted he not be allowed to use the much nicer room that is the Avatar's room in the Southern Air Temple. So a lesson in humility, ultimately. There's that. Then a knock at the door. A young, surprisingly muscular monk drops a box of letters to him, but at the top is Daisha saying, "This box contains messages that arrived for you while we were traveling. Some come from your friends and family in the Fire Nation. Others are from across the world who seek the Avatar's help with one matter or another. You asked me how you might learn detachment. Here is a way to begin. Read not a single one." And it's like, I get the point here, but at the same time, she's like advocating that like he not read like messages of help. There's a bit of a weird aspect here. And so I kind of appreciate that Roku's kind of like, well, maybe, but actually no, I'm going to read these. Sorry. We can address the lesson here a little bit later on. Overall. So anyway, his firebending training had taught him to focus on the pause after each inhale. So that's kind of cool. Content of the message. He couldn't care less about what his parents had to say, but he longed to read comforting words from his grandmother. That's interesting. So obviously some issues with him and his mother and his father, but his grandmother he quite likes, so that's interesting. Sozin would have surely written him several messages by now. Roku itched to hear his friend complain about how the Fire Lord wasn't entrusting him with enough responsibility. Maybe there was a note from Ta Min. It wasn't likely, but who knew? Request from aid, a plea from one of the Earth Kingdom monarchs or one of the Water Tribe chiefs. So that's interesting, obviously referring to the idea of, like, obviously the Queen of Amashu and the actual, like, Earth King, and then the Water Tribe chiefs. Of course, there is the overall chief, the Northern Water Tribe chief, and then the Southern Chieftain. Of course, we know their names from the RPG. Of course, if you saw my video yesterday, I went over them again. Did she truly expect him to ignore them? Of course, that's interesting. Couldn't hurt to skim a few. He reads them, and we go into the next chapter. Now, straight away, here is some very, very interesting stuff here. So, okay, my preview ends at page 27. Okay, that's interesting. So some people are getting different cuts in the chapter. I think I have one coming up at like maybe 33 or something like that. But anyway, we go into the next one, and this is a Sozin chapter. And you know, we haven't skipped anything so far. This is all in a row. And this is the first time we're actually seeing, I suppose, a present-day Sozin chapter post the present-day Sozin chapter, yeah, at the start of the book. So, he's playing Pai Sho, and he's on a ship. What's he doing? Straight away, because I don't think we were expecting Sozin to leave the Fire Nation in the book. At least that's my prediction based on the limited information that we had from before, was like, okay, that's what we're doing. So anyway, on the other side sat his opponent, Dalasay, his sister's tutor turned ex-girlfriend. So a few things here, of course, is that one, this is an ex-girlfriend of Zaysan. So it's not at all a secret to Sozin that Zaison liked girls. So the whole Ryoshan thing is not like an inherent like super secret or anything like that. So that's kind of an interesting thing. This character was also referenced in one of the previous chapters. Now, Dallasay. Immediately I was like, we have heard that name before in the RPG. But again, it was the same situation of I searched the Roku RPG stuff, no mention. Widened the search. Dallasay is a Korra era Roku character. This is the nomadic pro bending character. This is the character who is wants to bring airbending into pro bending, and they're doing the exhibition match and stuff like that. I think the history of this character is also that they are the child of like high ups in the Terra Triad. Obviously, not the same character, but again, that's 2 times in 2 chapters we've had two characters from 2 different eras, 2 pieces of content that are, I suppose, were being made at the same time. That's weird to me. That's very, very weird to me that they would do that. It's like, oh, the name Dallasay, we're going to use it here and also here with like 2-3 generations separating them. So I'm not sure what the situation here is. Is that like, it almost feels like it's like a little bit of a mistake that like, I understand one, because we do have an example of multiple characters having the same name elsewhere in like the franchise, but these are quite specific names, and again, like how close the 2 pieces of content they appear in are together. But anyway, so this is Sozin and his own team, as we're going to get. So we have Dallasay is on his team, and then also Kozaru, stocky and short-haired companion. So there we go. Her burn-scarred muscular arms crossed over her chest. So this is the team that he's gone on this mission. But like, what is the mission? That's the interesting thing. So he's playing Paisho with Dallasay. She was the smartest person he knew, so she should have no problem, gaining the advantage, of course. Interesting as well. Sozin makes a poor move with the White Lotus tile. That feels very thematic, of course. But yeah, okay. Dallasay overlooked the mistake. And then yeah, Sozin and Roku played games together. Roku never let him win, and it seems like Roku always won in these games. Because Sozin was always quite aggressive, Roku was more patient, and that's the way it always kind of seemed to work. So that's interesting. And yeah, Kozaru was terrible at Paisho. And let's see. Taizo was always impressed upon Sozin the importance of surrounding himself with loyal people who could serve him well in the future, and now he was wondering if he'd made a mistake recruiting these 2. When Dallasay and Zaison had been dating, his sister hadn't been able to shut up about the brilliant girl who had risen from servant class on Ember Island, but how useful were her brains if she held herself back. Kozaru, on the other hand, had come to Sozin's attention after she defeated one of his private firebending tutors in an Agni Kai a couple of years ago. Formidable fighter, but Roku had succinctly summed up the most pressing concern for the first time they met her. She seems like the kind of person who'd slit your throat for a silver piece and a healthy pig chicken. So 2 interesting characters that we have here, especially with like, okay, like Zaison likely maybe at this point not going to be super heavily involved in the story, but through Dallasay, I guess we can maybe get a little bit of Zaison stuff as we kind of go through the book. That's kind of interesting. So yeah, the Paisho continues. Something's happening up on deck. The junk's captain, a rough-looking pirate, bursts through the door. "We're here, Lee." So Lee is what Sozin is using as his fake name, which is the very common thing in Avatar. It's very much the in-joke. This probably has to be the equivalent of like, I've got a bad feeling about this or something like that in Star Wars, of just like, yeah, if you use a fake name, you probably got to use Lee realistically. So yeah, And then here's interesting. This is not official Fire Nation business. Firelord had expressly denied Sozin's request to take the ship. Stretched as thin as they were these days with the Outer Island Rebellions. So there's an interesting kind of a historical thing of like, okay, there we go. That explains a few things about like the RPG perhaps. In terms of like why Taiso is still focused on sort of Fire Nation, maybe internal stuff. Why Sozin has a little bit of something within the Fire Nation to put down when he takes over is that I guess there are rebellions in the Outer Islands. So interesting. He'd recruited the two, outfitted them in clothes of commoners, and paid a pirate enough to follow orders without asking questions. So they get on deck, the fog coming in. So straight away, the second you hear fog, and if you've read the description you of the book, you know the island of note in the story is a foggy island. So it's like, wait, how is Sozin arriving here already? Wait, Sozin's going to this island. Why does he then ask Roku to get involved here? Like, what's going on here? There's a lot of like, okay, Sozin's role in the book is definitely bigger than we thought here if he's going to be going against his father to explore islands. But like, why is this happening? We'll find that out shortly. Dense mist, of course. He had been expecting this. According to what he'd read, fog perpetually cloaked this island, keeping it hidden over thousands of years, except to those who knew its exact coordinates. For any ship that happened upon it sitting in the middle of the sea, like an unmoving cloud, it was an easy enough decision to steer clear of unknown dangers. So they're going to set anchor. This is the closest I'm willing to get. Are you sure it's the right island? I'm sure it is. Whether there's an island in the middle of that spirit soup, it's up for you to find out. So obviously there's a sense that this is spirity in some way. People definitely get a bit of a spirit sense from this island, so that's interesting. Landing boat is stocked with provisions. I need the other half of my payment to buy that villa in the capital I've had my eye on. And then here's where I get a skip. I don't get page 33, though I think earlier on when I checked, I think I did get 33. So I might be missing certain key sections of this that maybe I had read earlier. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, we skip 33. We go into the next chapter. Okay, someone else has 33. Let's see. The nation would not have another avatar serve as Grand Advisor. Perhaps his father would feel he had overestimated Sozin. Sozin, however, never gave up. He would find a way to make himself indispensable to his father and his nation, and the inspiration for how he might do this came from a memory. Okay, so him going on this mission is him thinking, I need to do something big to get my father to think, to make up for the fact that I'm not the Avatar. I have to do something of note to make him really buy into me as the next in charge of the nation. And then here we go. Here's the reveal. When they were younger, Sozin, Yasu, and Roku would slip through the palace's secret passages and sleep into the Dragonbone catacombs. So from context, very clearly, Yasu is Roku's brother, because they highlight that these three were born on the same day. And the idea of, Sozin in a previous chapter asking Roku about, is this about what happened to your brother? And the two of them, Sozin and Roku, are best friends, but the third is missing. Yasu, I think, very clearly is Roku's brother. So that's interesting. So yeah, Dragonbone Catacombs, so that's interesting. The boys loved reading through restricted scrolls the fire sages had stored among the bones of Sozin's ancestors. And there's some really interesting stuff here, yeah. Heroic firebending masters who could breathe fire, produce blue flames, there we go, channel lightning, but through the ancient text they discovered even rarer firebending skills such as the power of flight, the ability to make a distant target explode, ways to harness the power of a comet, and even a method to extend one's life indefinitely. And it's like, whoa, stop, you're blowing our minds here with all this lore. So pretty much effectively like the first time they're highlighting the whole point that like, oh, blue fire is a significant thing straight away. That's interesting. Flight, backstory kind of thing, interesting. Early mentions of combustion bending, of course. I'd be very interested to know, like, has that just been added since the Yang Chen era into the Dragonbone Catacombs, based on the events from that book or the events shortly afterwards? The history of the harnessing the comet prior to Sozin is super interesting in terms of like, when did that become a thing? And then obviously Sozin latches onto that, obviously, that makes sense. But who was trying to use it before to know that this is a thing? And then the big one here is like, a method to extend one's life indefinitely. Obviously, Kyoshi has been using it. That's the whole reason Kyoshi ends up being over 200 years old. And obviously, as far as we're aware, her technique is not earthbending. It's just a sort of like using your chi in a very specific way to keep yourself the same forever, effectively. But is this a different method for firebenders specifically? Because obviously Sozin ends up living to be over 100. It's only like 102, I think it is, if I remember correctly. But still, he lives to be over 100. That is somewhat significant for a character. So has he used this a little bit to a certain degree? That's sort of interesting. Sozin was convinced it was possible to learn these powers, but Yasu always maintained they were pure fiction. Roku, for his part, didn't care either way. He was happy to tag along. So, lot going on here. Lore. It was in one of these adventures that Sozin came across a Zito-era scroll titled The Long Road by someone named Asho. Again, I'm not sure how you meant to pronounce the O with the thing over it. I'm not sure. Ashu. Someone will probably say in the chat. It was a travelogue that detailed the author's journey across the world, telling of his encounters with all sorts of exotic people and fantastic spirits along the way. It was entertaining enough, humorous and bawdy, but only one of the stories stuck with Sozin throughout all of the years. Ashu wrote of being hired to investigate the case of an entire ship with a crew of over 200 that had vanished. He followed the clues to a dense fog in the middle of the sea. After his own ship ploughed straight into a massive rock that nobody had seen, the crew abandoned the sinking vessel. Ashu washed ashore on a mountainous island with fog so thick he couldn't see his own hands in front of his face. He wandered through the mist for days before stumbling upon a narrow path that led to a village nestled in a valley. The people, who had never seen anyone from the outside world before, greeted him like a king. He spent several days as their honoured guest, during which time, here's the big thing, he discovered their benders had powers 1,000 times stronger than any he'd seen before. Waterbenders who could control the weather, airbenders who could command typhoons, earthbenders who could produce or sink islands, and firebenders who could move the sun. And it's like, okay, this is the bit at the end especially gets quite exaggerated, and it's like, okay, it's a legend, it's an old story, highly over exaggerated, but the truth of this would have to be that I guess there are people with enhanced bending to a certain degree. Here, to the extent of this, perhaps not, but powerful benders. Because like they're obviously alluding to the idea of like airbenders in the middle of a storm. If you're a master airbender, you can harness the power of a storm. That's the whole Kelsong situation. Waterbenders in the weather, of course, we've seen like waterbenders like manipulate the clouds and stuff like that. But like, yeah, like if you are enhanced, I suppose you can stop weather over a certain area. You can probably make it rain over a certain area. You can make mist come in. Makes sense. Earthbenders who can sink islands, okay, produce lava bending. That's I guess that has to be the case. Unless they're just alluding to like earth bending, like bringing up the seafloor to make an island. But still, like I'm assuming lava bending plays a role in this for sure. So that's super interesting. Now, the question is obviously going to be, like, this makes sense because if we switch over to this for a second, the description of the book, a secret that could lead to catastrophe in the wrong hands. So, what's going on here? Is this the secret of this island? That something on this island means that there are enhanced benders here. Also, all 4 nations? That's interesting. Like airbenders? Like what's going on here? So immediately my assumption is probably that some of this probably has to be not true, but we'll see what happens. The chief so adored Asho that he agreed to teach the outsider how to strengthen his firebending. So there we go. That is until he caught Asho sleeping with his daughter. Asho barely escaped the island with his life. It was with this story in mind that Sozin had approached his father a few weeks ago. Father had been sitting in several steps above the imperial throne. He's all about Roku, of course. Not yet. What is it? I'd like permission to take a ship. To what end? He explains it. I'd like to search for the island. No. Complete and utter disappointment. No. Why not? Why not? You will not waste your time with and our nation's resources chasing after some childish fantasy. You really believe a firebender can grow strong enough to move the sun? I do. Then you are as much a fool as I feared. Okay. And then here we go. Here's what he thinks of his children, I suppose, is the point here. You cannot rest on your birthright alone, Sozin. It's obvious to everyone that Zaison would make a much better leader. Unfortunately, she was not born a firebender, so the clans and sages will never follow her. But neither will you gain their true loyalty if it becomes widely known that you believe such nonsense. A nation is only as strong as its leader, therefore never speak of this again. Invest your time in history, philosophy, economics, sciences, proper subjects for a future Fire Lord, and write Roku another letter. Don't come before me again without his response. So this is interesting to see this, like, Sozin wants to follow the legends. That's an interesting kind of thing. And even the idea that he's really latching onto the scrolls from the past, and like that idea of like, I want to add all of this stuff into my arsenal of bending moves. And it to a certain degree makes his father seem lacking in ambition, that he's so focused on very specific things but then not others. So interesting. So yes, father. He had no intention of listening to his father. Instead, he put out words. He would pay handsomely for anything written by something from Ashu. And he gets an ancient map. It depicted the sea southeast of the Fire Nation and showed a number of islands along a portion of the volcanic Sibuyan chain Sozin didn't even know existed, each labeled with the same handwriting as the long road. So, Sibuyan... Because like we got reference to the Yang Chen book to the Natsuo Island chain of islands. Now we have the volcanic Sibuyan chain of islands, I guess. So that's interesting. And around one of these islands, Ashu had drawn swirling fog. And now, water beneath the landing boat growing shallow, he had found it in real life. And I just think there's such a cool atmosphere to this chapter of just like, we're going on an adventure with the prince of the Fire Nation, and like we're doing something like super cool and interesting. Like, I in no way predicted, I don't think anyone probably could have called that this is the approach that they were going to take, is like, you know, Sozin going adventuring a little bit. Kozuru and Dalase wrote the both perfectly, and it was not with firebending strong enough to move the sun. When that came, his father would no longer mourn Zaison's lack of firebending or reprimand Sozin about what a nation's leader needed. So the question obviously is, when he gets to the island here and whatever he discovers, is it what the legends say or is it something else? That's the real ultimate question in all of this. Let's see, what do we have here? Follow me and be ready. Be ready for what? Anything. And she, of course, has a rope dart, Dalase. Covered in fog. Okay, so they just get onto the island here. Looking at the description here. So sand and beach, soil and palms, chirping birds, buzzing insects, trees taller, slashing away at vines and undergrowth. All she had to say was that he'd gotten lost in the mountains, stumbled upon a path that led to a village nestled in the valley. Okay. Climb uphill. Lunch of sliced rice balls. Komodo rhino jerky. There's a line. And tea. So it's like, okay, I guess they eat those things as well as use them as mounts. Okay. Sounds like a hog monkey. Creature let out a blood-curdling howl. Sounds like dinner. Spirit soup. There was something inhumane about this place. I don't get page 39. So obviously there's a bit of a transition between this, and then suddenly they're attacked by 3 wild cow pigs, of course. So that's more of a typical Fire Nation animal, I guess. They could be dinner. 2 people burst through the brush. They were older, muscular men, one tall, one short. Green and pale yellow Earth Kingdom armor. So here is the introduction of the Earth Kingdom, because again, we have to realize that that's the whole plot of the book, is that the Earth Kingdom are coming in over this, and he's encountering them, but we've not encountered, I guess, the actual inhabitants of this island. Let's see. Quest just joined, haven't read it yet. Have they mentioned the fear of water yet? It hasn't been especially confirmed, but I think the assumption, and I think most of the chat agree with it, is that I think they're basically telling us that Roku's brother Yasu died at sea or something like that, and that's why Roku specifically has a fear of open water and not of general water, because of what happened there. And one of the bigger reveals is that the amazing kind of friendship dynamic between Sozin and Roku, this duo, used to be a trio, because Yasu is Roku's twin brother, and they were like a trio of friends who would do stuff together. So that, I think, is meant to explain it. It is related to some sort of a trauma surrounding, I guess, the loss of his brother. Though, like I said, it's not expressly confirmed what specifically happened to the brother, but I think that's what is being alluded to in some of this stuff. But we'll have to wait and see. Okay, what else do we have here? Okay, fight begins here. So, rope dart sails towards the tall man's heart. Kozaru fights for firebending. A shield of rocks rose from the ground, deflected both attacks. Sozin felt a jolt of excitement. Benders, he'd found them. But why were they wearing Earth Kingdom military uniforms? He started to call out for everyone to stop fighting when the tall man flung several shards of rock at him. He sidestepped. He advances towards the taller one because he was eager to test himself against enhanced earthbending. Now, obviously, I think the truth of this is immediately obvious. He's not actually, I think, fighting an enhanced earthbender here. Because this is not actually the inhabitants of this island. But still, it's a fight. And we get to see him in action here. So, Sozin has a sword, turning it to dust. He launches 2 more, deflects them, pressing forward. Tosses a boulder the side of an armadillo bear at him. He rolls under it. He's feeling a bit disappointed. Maybe it's not correct. The earthbender armoured himself in rock and unleashed an unrelenting flurry of slashes, punches, and kicks. Metal clanged against stone. Fire crackled. Neither blade nor flames penetrated the armour. He took a moment to reassess. They're covering, the others are covering what they're doing. Distraction, and then Sozin is hit in the centre of the chest with a rock-encased fist, flies backwards. Wind knocked out of his lungs. He felt like his heart stopped. The earthbender snatched Sozin off the ground, gathered him into a crushing hug. So the bear hug here technique, trying to break him with pure strength. His vision tunneled as he started to lose consciousness. And then we get Sozin doing something crazy here. But before he did, he took one last breath. Channeling what remained of his energy, Sozin let out a sudden pulse of heat. The surge shattered the Earthbender's armor and knocked the two of them apart. Ignoring the pain that thrummed through his muscles, Sozin sprang to his feet, rushed over to the fallen Earthbender, and grabbed the man by the collar. "I thought you were supposed to be stronger," Sozin said. The Earthbender groaned, eyes out of focus. He glanced at the man's body. Several shards of stone that had protected his body moments ago were now lodged in his stomach. He was slowly bleeding out. So, this is the Sozin special technique of like him being able to use specifically like the heat aspect of firebending. This was shown to us previously mainly with like heat redirection, but now it's just that like he's able to just like let out a pulse of heat, which seems kind of a bit of a crazy technique because it's obviously like, I guess it's basically invisible. Now maybe it has to be up close to do this much damage, but still like interesting that they're developing this more, that this is actually a specific technique that he has, and like we've not heard too much about this before. Where's your village? Where do you live? We don't live here. We're here with the Earth Kingdom, I guess. His eyes glazed over, his breathing stopped. Then a hollow horror snaked through his veins. It was the first life he had ever taken. So that's super interesting. This is the first time Sozin ever kills someone here. Clearly in self-defense, of course, but, you know, this is the first life he ever takes. His teammates arrive at this point. Kozuro, I guess, is more used to this. And she's like, "Look at you, killer. Guess you're more than some pampered prince." But Dallasay is like, oh no, wasn't expecting this to happen. This is not impressive overall. And it's like, is this all it took for them to kind of respect me even more? That's the interesting kind of lesson from this, potentially. And he just, I guess, goes along with it. So that's interesting. Yeah, Earth Kingdom is here. This changes everything. What do you want to do? Find their base, burn it to the ground, Kozuro suggests. Let's see. They wore old Earth Kingdom armor. They were out hunting in the mountain. They must have established a presence out here at some point, a military outpost, but not a very important one. Right, okay. More likely, they stumbled upon this island through dumb luck and are trying to claim it for the Earth Kingdom. So that's the big question of, like, is it just that? Basically not used island by the Fire Nation, the Earth Kingdom find it, and they just happen to be here. Or do they actually know the secret of the island? Or is it Sozin coming here that has maybe alerted them to the fact that there is something more important? So here's the politics coming into play of like, ooh, we killed someone. Have we started a war, basically? Yeah. Engaging their forces would draw the Fire Lord's attention to this. At worst, and here's a key point. At worst, it would shatter nearly 200 years of so-called peace. So, reading into that line there, you would have to assume that what they're saying there is that there hasn't been a notable war in the world in nearly 200 years. And if you time it out, you're like, okay, Kyoshi lives to be 230 years old. We're 16 years on from that. So like 246, if Kyoshi lived that long. We're talking about 200 years ago, meaning when Kyoshi was like 46. That's basically in or around where I think we assume Qin the Conqueror, that whole incident happened. So I'm guessing that's what they're potentially talking about here. That was the last time there was a war. And with Kyoshi defeating Qin, that created peace after that point. I think that's effectively what they're alluding to, because otherwise I think you would be a lot more vague about referring to like the timing here, especially because we do have exact timing for avatars. So that's kind of an interesting one. Because like it's a tough one, because like I don't think we really have too much of a foundation to properly clarify where the Qin incident actually happens. Just because Kyoshi is so old and she probably looks relatively young even when she's 100 plus years old. But I think that probably has to be the case. I think it's because we've known, it's always been, I think, a part of Kyoshi's history is that she keeps peace for a really long time. So her dealing with a conflict has to happen like earlier in her life, I guess. But still, it's just speculation for now. It could not be traced back to Sozin or the Fire Nation, so we return to the ship. We're retreating. Why? What? He never gave up. He given him an idea for what that way might be. It was going to require Sozin to do something he did not want to do, follow his father's advice. I don't get page 45. So there's that. And then something happens. Why is that? Hard to say. Maybe all the death. It's not a natural part of life. Sure. We inhale. Abbott. So I guess this is the start of another chapter. I think that has to be the case because we cut directly to the other side of the story. So Abbott Rab 10. We borrow from the earth. We return to the earth. We're physical. We're spiritual. I don't think I got this page before. Let's see. Well, what are we doing here? Abbott Rab 10 fell quiet. Oh, you have no. I got this page before, definitely. Yeah. You have a visitor. Yeah, a visitor. Who is it? And the interesting point here is that this is she said her name was Ta Min. So here is the introduction of Ta Min into the story, where we were like, how is Ta Min getting involved in this? Like, what actually happens to bring Ta Min into the story? Well, she has arrived to come and see Roku at the temple. Okay. That's interesting. So interesting. And Roku's like, get rid of my schedule. I'm open. So he's definitely going to see her. Sister Daisha says that would like us to turn the young woman away, and he's like, no. I will see her. I'll request she meet you here as soon as she's ready. So I'm guessing Sozin has sent Ta Min to relay the message. I think that's what's kind of clear from this, is that this is clearly the end of a chapter. Sozin is going to take his father's advice to sort of get what he needs from this situation by using Roku. So maybe him just asking as the prince is not going to work, so he's going to get Roku's attention by sending the girl that he likes there to do it, to guarantee that it gets through, I guess. So that's an interesting point. So it's interesting that means that is very clearly Sozin using Ta Min as like a tool, kind of to work Roku around with. So that's quite interesting. But yeah, Ta Min is involved. Of course, from the back of the book. Do we actually have it here? Yeah. Something happens. The mission starts. We get this bit from the back of the book. Was Ta Min okay? He needed to help her. Could he enter the Avatar state? He couldn't, and Gyatso gets them out. So Ta Min, I guess, tells him about the mission, and then something happens to her. But what? And it's like, it doesn't seem like she gets involved in the conflict. Like I was speculating that maybe she's the one involved in the Fire Nation side of things on the island. It does seem that Sozin has like almost like stealthily found out about it, and there maybe isn't a noted Fire Nation appearance there. So that's that. And yeah, pages 48 to 363 are not included in the sample. So you can see that the book is quite a bit longer than some of the other books. Like the last Yang Chen book was like 320 something pages, I think. So we have probably about 40 more pages here than the previous book. So that's good. I always prefer the books to be a little bit on the longer side of things. So that's definitely exciting. When I looked earlier on, I did get the epilogue. I'm not going to really mention anything in that. Did we see Gyatso yet? Yes, we did. Gyatso is all the way back up here at the start. Actually, it's in chapter chapter 2, isn't it? Where does Gyatso get introduced? Yeah, here. Yeah, we get to see the initial kind of meeting between the two here. And we learn that Gyatso is having trouble airbending himself. His airbending is inconsistent. It seems to just like go away effectively at some times, but then it comes back. And because of that, he's frustrated that he can't freely be an airbender because it can just go away at different points. So both Avatar and Future Companion have issues with airbending. Roku mainly because he actually hasn't started the instruction. Daisha seems to have think that he's not ready, or he doesn't get the core philosophy of airbending at the start. He's too Fire Nation focused still, whereas Gyatso seems to have some other problem with airbending. That's interesting. But yeah, the other point that we have here is we have the search bar. So I've already looked up Zito. What terms should we look for? What are we trying to find out if we get any references to in the book? So one thing is obviously like Zaison. How often is Zaison referenced? So we have all this stuff here from the preview we already have, and she is at least referenced once more in the book. So unfortunately, it seems like we're not going to get maybe too much Zaison, unless, because Dallasay is there, unless she's always referred to just as a sister. So I suppose maybe that means sister. Oh, okay, there we go. There we go. So sister a bunch of times in what we have. And then, yeah, look at all this. Okay, yeah, so I'm guessing Zaison does get referred to actually quite a bit. So that's interesting. Obviously, one thing I suppose someone would want to know about, like Avatar Salai. Nothing. Avatar Gun. Nothing. Oh, Lauga. So Lauga. Nope. Let's see. Yosor, no. No. Gonryu, Zoryu, no. Jailun, 3 times. So in what I'm guessing is probably the next chapter or the chapter afterwards, we will, I guess, get the full-on reveal of Earth King Jailun. Gozun is referenced because I know that name came up in the epilogue when I read it. Yeah. Oh, actually, so I guess this is how I got access to the epilogue. I'm guessing if I click this, I will get access to the epilogue again. I'm not sure I want to click it, though, for spoiler-based reasons. But just as a... Oh, but little spoiler there, just if you're wondering about Tom-In. Something plant Tom-In as a diplomat in Queen Gozun's royal court several months ago. So, Sozin using Tom-In is, I guess, a pretty big plot point to a certain degree. So that's kind of interesting. Let's see. No Tieguai. Kyoshi, of course. So we have the 2 obvious mentions, and then, yeah, Kyoshi, is, as you can see here, gets lots of mentions, like in the following pages. So next chapter, basically, chapter after that, a little bit later on, and quite a few times throughout the book after that point. Roku's brother, Yasu. Whoops. So obviously you can see here, Yasu's referenced here, but also the name comes up a bunch of times here. Probably highlighting that I guess we get the reveal of Yasu in or around this section of the book, because look at that, 170 in the 70s, we get tons of references. So there's a lot going on with Yasu. Let's see, if we just type in the word sage. So we have, of course, a bunch of mentions from what we have, but there is references to sages as we go through the books here as well. Yang Chen is going to be referenced a bunch of times here. I guess in the epilogue. Oh no, that's the back of the book, isn't it? So there's at least 2 more references to Yang Chen. Do we know Roku's parents and the grandmother's names? Not yet. It seems like I don't think there was any random names that we could associate. We don't know. So father, I guess, will come up quite a lot. Mother. So the word mother gets referenced quite a bit, which could be for Roku or Sozin, potentially. I already did Zito. I'll do the obvious one, Spirit. So keep in mind, like the spirit of no nation is a thing, but also like spirit could be a thing. So quite a few references to the word spirit, including spirit energy. There, did we see that? So the epilogue obviously references something going on there. Chondro, I think I looked this up before. I don't think there's any mention of Chondro. Yeah, no Chondro. Ooh, Rava, actually. No Rava. Ko, apart from the mention from the preview chapter, I don't think Ko is mentioned. So yeah, we already have that from really early on. It's in the prologue. It's just Sozin referencing Ko. Otherwise, there's no reference. And then no glowworm. Karuk seems like only in the bits that we've already seen. So Karuk doesn't get any more mentions beyond that. No Minister Zianda. Minister, no. I'll just have a clan. Okay, so clan comes up a few times. Spell that, but I got the spelling wrong there. I think I did it earlier on. No Salai. What else could we do? Actually, yeah. Probably check up this Chin. Okay, there's that. Might not have spelled that correctly, but obviously no mention there. People looking for Rangi. No Rangi references. Immortal. There's a few mentions of extend, given that we already have a reference to the idea of, like, the legend says extend one's life indefinitely, so they might get into that. Yoon. Sorry. Only the reference that we got in the preview chapter already. Comet, actually. Oh, one more reference in the book to Comet. So, page 194. So, 2/3 of the way in, there'll be another reference to the Comet. Who knows what the context it will come up in. So, there's stuff like that. What else? No Ryoshan, so based on the Zaison stuff, it doesn't seem like we're obviously going to do the direct setup there for that sort of stuff. So that's kind of interesting. I also did, I think earlier on, I did Skiri. So no references directly by name to the Northern Water Tribe chief. The other character is Quanit. No mention. Ooh, Dragon, actually, that's a good idea. So obviously Dragonbone Catacomb is going to come up here. Yes. Okay, there's a reference to dragon on page 33, which I don't have. But there's a few more references to dragons. Now, are we going to see Fang in this? Probably not. But we'll see, I guess. Because what's interesting about this is that like this era is actually interesting because dragons are just going to be around. Like Roku and Sozin are both just going to get their own dragons at some point here. That Sozin only later in his life will start to hunt the dragons and they'll go extinct. Because like even in Aang's era, in the past, before the comet, before the ice, there were dragons around as well. So interesting. But obviously that's still where they were sort of limited. But anyway, so there's a few more references to that. Natsuo, I don't think that actually comes up. Yeah, I checked that before. Do you think Roku will make any contact with Kyoshi? Let's see. Is there any way to do that? Maybe. Few for communicate. Let's see. Combustion. Oh, sorry, I spelled that wrong. Combustion. So one reference to the word combustion, which I think makes sense. Lava. I think lava does come up, if I remember correctly. Yeah, a bunch of references to lava. So I think it feels like because one of the interesting things with Roku is that I think they might actually go for the idea that Roku is actually a lava bender, like not just with the avatar state, but that he is a lava bender otherwise. Because I think the RPG gives him a lava technique. Now, does that mean it's canon for sure? But we've seen him use it, so there's the potential for that as well. Oh yeah, is there any more mention to lightning? Yeah, a few more references here. Because, yeah, the way they word it here is like that. So, wait, do we know Sozin can even use lightning? I actually don't know. Is that a confirmed detail? I think there's just an assumption he's powerful enough where he should have it, but I'm not actually sure it's confirmed. Because obviously, like, Ozai has it. Azula has it. Iroh learns it. Yeah, so this might be a way to explain how he maybe learns it in some way. I don't know. Lee. No, so no real other references to that. Let's see. I suppose the word state for Avatar state. Maybe. Just glow. There's a few options there. But I love this kind of exercise here of just like, you know, some of Avatar Studios better be writing these terms down in terms of just like the things Avatar fans find interesting in books. Most of all, is just like put this stuff into your book to make it interesting. Animal. Okay, a bunch of references to animal. Scale. Okay. Okay, there we go. Like, obviously, like I said, it seems like basically we have access to the epilogue. I'm not really going to go into it, but you can sort of maybe get a sense from that little detail there that something else happens on the island. But anyway. Oh yes, Sun. Actually, that's a good one. 32 references to Sun. Oh wow, they continued this up. What else? Let me see. Just chi. Okay, that's nice. Ooh. Chakra? No, of course not. But yeah, I guess we'll end it here because we don't want to go crazy, ruining the book for ourselves potentially. But I think it's a super interesting preview. For me, like I said at the start, I think it makes the book so much more interesting that Sozin seems to be quite heavily involved in this, actually doing stuff. Now, how much that will continue throughout the book, especially once Roku's mission properly gets going, I'm not sure, but I like the amount of Sozin that we have so far. And I think the fact that they've added in the Gyatso plot of them both not really having airbending, that could be quite exciting. Ta Min being involved and maybe in a bigger way than we maybe expect is pretty exciting too. The fact that Sozin has his own little team, but are they his friends necessarily is an interesting point. So that's certainly interesting. And now it's just about I would say the thing that we don't really know is just okay, what is actually going to be on the island and what actually is here. Oh yeah, actually that's really good. Of course not. No Yuyan. Is the island and how well they deliver on what actually happens there, because to me some of the legend has to be true. They have to lean into that kind of bending enhancement, that cool fun factor of what the legend of this island actually is. If it ends up just being that, okay, we go to the island, none of that is true, but there's a bunch of metal here or something like that, is that the most interesting thing in the world? Probably not. From a political point of view, perhaps, but I kind of do need some of the fancier stuff there that they alluded to I think be true, because where do we get that bit actually? I'll bring that page up actually because I just think it's super interesting. Yeah, it's somewhere around here, isn't it? Yeah, here we go. The Long Road by Ashu. And it's here. Yeah, the people. And then it's he discovers apparently the benders with powers 1,000 times stronger than they've ever seen before. Water benders who could control the weather. Air benders who could command typhoons. Earth benders who could produce or sink islands. And fire benders who could move the sun. This kind of feels like they really have to you can't just, I think, hand wave all of that away after the setup there and change that to something very different. I hope that delivers well enough. Okay, so people want Pai Show. Okay, so we know there's a few references at the start, and then a few more as we go on. Oops, sorry. So yeah, a bunch more on the other pages. Now, is that just Sozin and his team playing more Pai Show? Does Roku come back into play playing Pai Show? Not really sure. Let's see. Could this be the connection to the Avatar Studios movie? Is this the Hidden Kingdom? Potentially. I would be a bit shocked if it connects in a way where this is the exact same place. I really don't think that is the case. I think Avatar is really just going for the idea that I think we just have an opening with unexplored islands, and it's a way to introduce plot elements. Okay, again, Lotus, we know that there's been at least a reference to it. So Lotus comes up one more time, maybe in the context of playing Pai Show, but we don't know. I suppose the word order. Who knows? Who knows? Hmm. Let's see. Do you think this is going to be more connected to the second book, or will it be separate stories? It's tough because we don't even know that, like, for sure we are getting a second Roku novel. Like, that actually just isn't confirmed just yet. Um, I'm guessing, to keep it consistent, they will do a second book, and at the very least, it will have the same style of connection, probably, as the Yang Chen book, is my guess. Um, it's an interesting one because I worry a little bit if they try to make it a direct follow up, and that, like, I think I want to see the Roku books move on a bit. Like, I want to see them have the ability to, like, oh, here's Takukak and here's his relationship with Roku, but they don't seem to want to let this series be about adult avatars for whatever reason. So I'm guessing the plot thread is going to set up like that. So we'll see what happens, though. Okay, Reckoning, I suppose. Oh yeah, I guess it's on every page, isn't it? Yeah, yeah, it's on every page, so it's not going to work out super well. Uh, uh, just the fact that they include the header as well. So yeah, the word reckoning appears many, many times in the book. Um, hmm. I'll go with actually, like, heat, because obviously we have Sozen's heat move. Um. Okay, so maybe he uses it a bit more throughout the book. But well, I do think that's maybe a, like, slight weird thing coming out of this, is that, like, I'm kind of more interested in the Sozen side of the book than maybe the Roku side of the book. But I think a lot of that is just because we are still very early days in the Roku side of the plot, whereas it does almost feel like for the early chapters, like, they've done more with Sozen here in, like, 2 chapters, just the prologue and chapter 3, to make me super care in this book about following Sozen, whereas Roku and the early days of being the Avatar is like, okay, cool, I still want to know about that, but it's not my absolute focus. Okay, yeah, let's see that they do that. So this search isn't super, like, great about, like, so I suppose the word learning might be. Okay, learning comes up a couple of times. Okay, getting towards the end. Oh, nation learned. Oh, there we go. I won't linger on it too much, but it seems like at the very end of the book, literally the Fire and Air Center of Learning is going to get referenced to. So there we go. That's interesting. I suppose, like, okay. Omashu Ba Sing Se. Wow. That's interesting. Have I spelled it wrong? I'm not sure. But yeah. That's super interesting. Yeah, this stuff is very cool. One of the cooler, I think, legends we've ever gotten Avatar, of, like, because it is properly recorded. It's not, like, super vague, but it's like how much is actually true. I actually kind of quite like this. One. I think this search includes anything that includes one. So, like, the word wanted and stuff like that would include this. It doesn't mean that Avatar 1 is going to appear. I think there's obviously a thing where, like, they obviously don't want. I suppose they can't really have. I suppose prior to Korra, really the other avatars super talk about Rava. Karuk feels like maybe one of the only characters where it might make sense with that he finds out, but I have to wait and see. Are there going to be any other important characters? That's why we don't really know. Obviously, we've got Roku Sozen, Gyatso. Ta Min is involved and might actually play a bigger role than we expect to. Sister Daisha is going to be here, but have we mostly done everything we need to do with Daisha, apart from maybe like referring back to her at the end of the book? That could be an interesting one. Actually, that's probably actually a decent one to do. This is just to kind of get a sense for how heavily involved is she. Okay, so sorry, she's mentioned quite a few times. A lot of it here, but okay, she'll be referenced here a couple of times. But then there is some jumps. No, it seems like she's going to consistently get referenced at least, so that's interesting. A lot then depends on, okay, Gyatso and Roku go to the island. Obviously, we know there is a Earth Kingdom base there. We know the Earth King is only referenced like 3 times in the book, so like he doesn't seem like he's here or doing anything. So is it going to be a general, Earth Kingdom general here? Or and this is where we get into the big thing here of, realistically, I think to make the book super interesting is we have to probably have a character who is native to the island and address, what we're actually doing there. Or is it just that the people we meet on the island are Earth Kingdom people? That's interesting. Guiding Wind has 1 mention. Okay, so we'll see how that works. Yeah, I guess because, like, guiding. Yeah, because like this would be plus mainly come up in relation to Udron. So, wait, why is it showing me this search results? Did it just ignore what I typed in? Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, so he only gets mentioned that time. Maybe the search isn't super great. Sages, it seems like, gets mentioned a bunch of times here, because we know at some point, I guess, as background information, it's going to get brought up that, like, oh, the Earth King is super aggressive, and they're going to mention him by name. They're going to mention why they know this is particularly happening, that sort of thing. So we'll have to wait and see there. But yeah, this is realistically the last proper preview we're going to get for the book. And next it's just the book coming out. Obviously, if you've been looking around online, you've probably seen that some people have the book already. And especially if you're in America, like, you probably actually have a decent chance of getting the book early yourself. Like I covered in my news video earlier on today, if you have a Books A Million nearby, you can do like click and collect. I think they just have it in stock. I think they are shipping it out to people. I think I saw someone mention some other stores potentially having it, and it's happened before with other bookstores as well, that they do get it in stock earlier. So in that sense, I'm glad that we've got the more kind of lengthy preview here, because I think it'd be tough waiting the whole time and not having more than just the 1 chapter and a little bit. This way, I think we have a better sense for what the book actually is. So, yeah. realistically, I probably won't have the book until like release date. I I just one being in Ireland. Basically, none of the bookstores here really stock the book, and anywhere that probably would stock it, the book has a UK slash like it's like Europe date as well. That's basically the end of August. Like it does have a separate release date as well, so that gets in the way. So things have just not worked out in the last kind of couple books for me getting the books like super early anymore. But still, it's got to be fun when it actually comes out to do the full coverage, because even doing just like partial analysis of like these opening chapters is like super interesting. Some of the stuff here is like pretty hype for sure. Like I think some people who hadn't read it, like what was the section earlier on that when we read it and people really freaked out? There was one point I remember specifically. I glanced over at the chat and people were going like, "Oh," I forget what it was at this point. Oh yeah, yeah. It's the crown prince headpiece being having a different perspective. Yeah, that was it. Where's that? Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah. Given the artifact to Roku had been Fire Lord Taiso's idea, a tangible reminder of where his true loyalty should lie, Taiso had said to Sozin, a leash, if you will. Sozin felt guilt over that. That's a big one there, because it changes your perception of the scene from 306 without actually changing the scene from 306. It's just that, oh yeah, did he make that decision to do that on his own? Actually, no, there's this. Because you're almost expecting that, like, wait, when he's saying goodbye to the Fire Lord, if Sozin has just given that to him and maybe hasn't run it past his father, then maybe might Roku have to deal with the fact of, like, the Fire Lord being like, hey, why do you have that? But in this case, it's like, no, he actually knows, and that maybe makes it a little bit more understandable how the prince could just give this away. So some interesting views on things because of that, of course. So that's super interesting. And then, oh yeah, the even just before this as well, yeah, it's the yeah, the trio together. Where's the other line I was looking for? Yeah, here we go. This one's pretty big. Like, perhaps this was supposed to be his brother or Sozin, who was found out to be the Avatar. They'd all been born on the same day. That's a huge reveal, because it's like, there's your twin Avatar reveal, because everyone's always speculating about that, and like they basically have done it right here. Now, I know a lot of people, when they really over-exaggerate the whole twin Avatar thing, some people technically get like what is possible wrong or not possible wrong, but this is interesting, and they get around, I would say, the obvious, really interesting idea of like, it seems like Yasu is dead, so they avoid the jealousy aspect between the brothers on the basis of like, ooh, it was you and not me. But they kind of still play that up between Sozin and Roku a little bit, but Sozin's going to be okay because he's royalty. So that's kind of interesting. And so it does mean that like we then have this new dynamic of like, oh yeah, like what is the effect of whatever happened to his brother on Roku? That's going to be very interesting to find out because they were all together. So interesting. Can you show exactly which page numbers you have available to you? Let's see here. It's kind of properly. What? Okay, OBS, I think, disconnected for a second there. But anyway, I have, let's see, everything from the start. Start of the book, go through this, all the first chapter, all the second chapter. And then this one here, I think I'm missing a page here. Yeah, I think it's everything except 33, I think. So yeah, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Next into this chapter, yeah, 30, 31, 32. Don't have page 33. We go along again, and then I don't have like what 40 something or okay, I don't have 39 either. There's 33 and 39 I don't have. I don't get 45 either, which is the opening page of whatever this chapter is called. And then my main preview stops at 47. But then I'm pretty sure can I get later pages, or is this just gonna move me around? Okay. So if I do this, and I scroll down here, I can get here. Whoops. I get the epilogue. So I can look at the epilogue, and if I remember correctly, I can look at the whole epilogue if I want to. So there's that. Obviously, I don't want to just go through it here because we only had the first four of them and stuff like that. So there's that. So interesting. The urge to scroll down, but we'll leave it at that. Let's see. A major new character is revealed in the acknowledgements. In the final sentence. Let's see. Do I get a look at the acknowledgements? I'm afraid to scroll down to even look for it. Okay, it's a brand new name, so I guess we don't have context for it. It's not like it's like this character that we've known for a while shows up, but I guess there is a new name that gets mentioned. So that's that. But yeah, this is always the thing with these weird previews. Like we've dealt with it before, but like comic previews of like you can look sometimes through the book. We have had times where comics have had their final pages come out in kind of previews like this. So that's interesting. So yeah, just be aware. You can get to the epilogue and read the epilogue if you so wish. I I believe if you really read through the first chapters that we have and then read the epilogue, it probably does spoil certain plot elements of the book, but then certain things you will be like, wait, what on earth happens in the meantime? Because we have like effectively like what 300 pages of content between kind of here and there, so like a lot happens in between. That's going to be like pretty huge overall. But yeah, what are we? What 18 days away? Is it? Because it's 23rd. Let's see. What's my plan covering the book now until release? Some people have preview pages. Some people have the whole book. Pretty much, there's nothing I really kind of can do, because like when you say people have different preview pages, like how much are we talking about here? Is it just that like some people do have page 33 and some people do have page 39, or like does anyone actually have preview pages from after 48 but aren't the epilogue of the book? Because I haven't really seen anyone mention stuff like that in chat. What people have. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. I can see a random chapter in the middle of the book. Okay. That's interesting. Because yeah, this is where it gets so weird, and we get into the idea of like, yeah, you start if you look at it from different regions, you see a slightly different preview. At least that's how like the Google Books one works and stuff like that, and it gets kind of complicated, stuff like that. So if I just open this up, okay, if I open it up again, not logged in, do I get different pages? No, I get even less pages actually not logged in. I only get like 28 up to 28, and then I don't get anything at the end. Surprise me, gonna work differently here. No. So yeah, I guess there's some variation. Is it one of those things where if a lot of people work together, can you get the whole book from the preview? It's happened before. I think some comics, like, people have managed to group together pretty much everything. I'm not sure it's necessarily worth it in that way. I'm not like so desperate to start my coverage that like I try to in any way do that. So it just comes down to like, I don't think I will be able to get the book early myself. So my coverage realistically is probably going to start day of release unless something happens. That's just kind of where we're at. I don't necessarily want to just kind of like keep jumping on and like, oh, someone sends me the pictures from like, here's this new chapter, here's this other chapter. This one I think works because I think pretty much everyone gets the first like, what is it, 4 chapters of the book, 4 or 5 chapters of the book, or like 3.5 or whatever. I think most people can see roughly the same thing here. Jumping ahead to a random middle chapter, especially if it's like the full thing, it's a bit weird. So we have to wait and see what happens there. That's just the situation. It's always a little frustrating because I'd like to start coverage as soon as possible, just because of like the amount of videos that I I typically do for the books. It is nice to get a head start. So it's not just like, oh, here's like 40 videos I kind of need to start on from this specific point. But, that's what happens. I just hope we don't get into a situation like this is where like I'm actually glad Bounty Hunter and the T-Brewer kind of got a little bit of a delay, and there is actually a bit of a month gap between this and that releasing. I just hope they don't drop the RPG book like in between the gap. I would really like it if they released the RPG before this book. I think that would be pretty nice to get us to the full-on release of the book. The other thing is that obviously, like, I think for my videos it probably helps if I'm able to listen to the audiobook and stuff like that for pronunciation on specific names. Thankfully, nothing's I think's been too complicated so far. Because Fire Nation names most of the time are pretty okay. So that's fine. But yeah, that's always the weird situation with these previews, is that like you can get different ones. I think typically the way these work, if you want to try and mess around with it, is that like I think if you do VPN from like different regions, I think you might get different books. But I think that was mainly a Google Books preview for comics. I'm not sure it works the same way with the Amazon preview. But yeah, it's exciting. It's the biggest content release of the year for Avatar, and realistically, like, do we expect anything particularly big to happen at the, like, pretty much I would say either convention, San Diego or New York Comic Con, that's going to like beat out the novel in terms of like significance? I'm not sure. I think things have been delayed enough to where I'd be surprised if we get like hugely significant Avatar Studios news this year, but maybe we'll get something. There'll obviously be some book announcements, but like, are they going to be like huge? I'm not sure. Because I think the big thing probably like that I did in my speculation video was like the next Avatar comic. So the next Avatar one shot, like, what character would actually just get people super excited? Because I can't obviously call it, because the reaction to the June Iroh comic was like, I think from most people was like, huh? Like really like, what? And no one I don't think was expecting that. And it's going to be fascinating to see what they do with the next one. Because it could be like one of the main characters, like maybe Asokka. May Ty Lee feel like they're kind of maybe obvious picks. But if they don't do them, then who do they do? Like, some suggestions were kind of like Ursa kind of would be cool. But then you're getting into like other world leaders. So like, do you do Hakoda? There's room there to do something with that if you wanted to. Quay, I'm not sure maybe how well that would do, but it could be interesting. And you get into that, like from a marketing standpoint, like if you go too obscure with the character that you're doing, will the book sell to enough people? That's that. Izumi needs more love. Well, yeah, on the Korra side of things, definitely the like Izumi could do that. Shouldn't necessarily be a new character every time. Yeah, definitely for sure. I would be surprised if they did go for like a character who we've already done this early. Like, I don't think it ever rules out like somewhere down the line we get another one of the main characters getting a one shot. But I'd be surprised if like Suki gets another comic within the next, like 4 or 5 books type thing. But who knows? Who knows? But that's the struggle that they're in, is that I felt that when they announced these books being the one shots, the whole point was that we can just sandbox wherever we want all over the Avatar universe. But now, schedule wise, the comics seem worse than ever. There seems to be absolutely no like agility within the comics to just, oh yeah, we'll just casually put out this and move this over here. No, it's like you get one comic a year, maybe a second comic a year, maybe a short story on the side for Free Comic Book Day. And there's no real sense that this has brought us like the ability to do more comics in a year. Like, it seems crazy that like in the early days of the comics, it was like, boom, Promise Part 1, 4 months later, Promise Part 2, 4 months later, Promise Part 3. And we were annoyed if like the books were delayed by like a week or two. Now it's kind of like, imagine we got books every like 4 months, give or take. That'd be pretty crazy. Yeah, the discussion about if they maybe should change publisher obviously is a feels like it's a somewhat valid debate. I think you have to give Dark Horse until the start of Avatar Studios to see what's happening. But like, if we get a movie and a series, and the comics are still the way they are, like where it's literally just in a year we get our one Avatar comic, it's a one shot. We get our one Korra comic, it's a one shot. And maybe depending on how the months play out, there's potentially a third one that hits in a year. I'm not sure that's like what we need. I'm not sure. Is Dark Horse bad with their other properties as well, or is it just Avatar? I think this is probably a pretty big question that like I don't buy enough comics elsewhere from Dark Horse to know if this is the case or not. But I think when I checked it up once or twice, yes, occasionally some of their other books do get delayed. Because, especially in a few years ago, a lot of that was happening because COVID was a big thing affecting everything in the industry. But it does feel like Avatar comics have been much more heavily affected than a lot of other series. For whatever reason, I'm not really sure. Obviously, it's an IP book, so it's not just Dark Horse working by themselves. Anything they do has to get approval from Avatar Studios, and it potentially, I think it's become kind of clear. Avatar Studios has probably not led to these approvals being quicker. It's just that there's a new title over the top of the group that makes the approvals. It's still fundamentally Nickelodeon, Paramount, Avatar Studios approvals, and it seems to take just as long to make everything happen. And that potentially is an issue. And so the question comes up of like, is it actually Avatar that's inefficient behind the scenes? Maybe. What I heard was Dark Horse lost multiple big licenses, so they had to downsize. Potentially, that's a thing as well, because like the comic industry is it's one of those things where like it's not like dying, but like it's not like in like an ideal state, I suppose, is the idea of like, you know, if not for the fact that like I'm super into like Avatar comics, I don't really read a lot of other comics, so that's kind of part of the problem, and it's why like I'm always like, I think it would be cool if Avatar was to do like single issue comics, but I'm also like, I almost don't want to have to follow that as such. So it's one of those kind of frustrating things where like I think Avatar I probably would prefer to follow some sort of like a manga style format. I think probably would be better, where, you know, theoretically they do something like where they combine, like, you know, use webtoons or whatever, and like we get like weekly or monthly chapters, but they collect it then into the collected editions or something like that. that way it solves like a bunch of issues at once of like, you know, you avoid the frustration from people who buy all the books of like, oh, well, I want to buy physical copies of the initial release, but then I also want to buy the collected edition. Whereas at least with like, especially like English, like say Shonen Jump, you can't get a physical copy of the chapters as they come out. You can only get the collected edition and stuff like that. I've always felt like that's probably what we need in the fandom, is a thing that is a little bit more like weekly, monthly. Which, with one-shot comics, you feel they should be coming out a little bit quicker. But they just aren't. That's the big issue, is that like, I think most of the one-shot comics we've got so far have been pretty good. And like, I expect Bounty Hunter the Tea Brewer to be pretty good from what we've seen in the previews. But I think there's always just going to be a sense following those comics around where it's like, this is the only comic release of the year. That like, ineffectively, the year before Avatar Studios like takes off and properly begins to deliver real information, they only released one comic? Like, what? And that's the real frustration there. And then especially now that the Korra comics are like way behind where they initially wanted them to be, it's nowhere. Do you think the 2020 Avatar hype was used properly to boost the series by the publishers and companies? Not really. Like, I would say there was a merchandise boom for like a year, and then no one followed up. Like, that's probably the main thing I'd say. I would say that the 2020 stuff has ultimately led to a lot of the big stuff we're going to get happening. Like, I think Avatar coming back to Netflix is the reason we probably are getting Avatar Studios. But did they directly then do anything super important? It feels like not quite. Because like, the novels were basically already in place. They were already doing the comics. And we're basically dealing with like, I think what's becoming a really weird decision is like, why on earth did they stop comic trilogies in like 2020, 2021? I get it, there's been delays and stuff like that, but that feels like a decision that they made like at least 2 years before they should have. You did not need to stop the ability for Avatar and Korra to do like trilogies that early, given where the schedule was. I think it's just pretty crazy. And then especially the fact that like, we assume like Beast of the Four Nations isn't really around anymore because of like the same reasons. It's like, what's the hold up effectively? Will Avatar eventually get to a Marvel Studios thing and announce a phase of movies along with all the comics and books? That's the big thing here, is that like, that's kind of what we're looking for. I'll probably start typing maybe some of this stuff. So that's my Roku preview, which was immediately made out of date by the fact that the timing on that video was absolutely terrible ultimately. It's like the day before people start getting the book in hand, and the day before we get the giant preview. But anyway. So yeah, we're basically talking about the idea of like the Avatar Studios like slate. The word slate is like the big thing of like, we've been building up to the fact that we now have a specific studio making Avatar stuff. Are they actually going to, like, for instance, probably Comic-Cons next year? Are we going to get an Avatar Studios panel? Mike and Brian are there, some other people, and they're just like, hey, we know you guys have been waiting like 4 or 5 years for this, and now is time. You guys already know about the first movie. It's the Aang movie. Here's the title of that movie. Here's a key visual. Here's maybe the first trailer, because we've been waiting so long for that. But there's more. If you've been following us, you know that we're working on multiple projects at once. And then boom, here is the first series. This is what it's going to be about. Maybe there's a visual, maybe not a trailer for that. But then boom, we're also working on another movie. here's what it's going to be about, and you have some small teaser for that. But boom, there's also going to be this other stuff. Like, here is an animated series. It's a mini series aimed at kids. We think hardcore fans will still like it, but it is aimed at a younger audience to get people into Avatar. But also, wait, there's more. Coming a little bit after that is this other kind of limited run series that has a slightly different like art style or animation style that's about this thing that might interest you. And then they get into, oh, and to make all this work together, Dark Horse Comics are doing some tie-in material for this. So they're still doing one-shots for Avatar and Korra, but also here's a prequel comic for the first movie, for the Aang movie. That sort of thing. Is that what we're going to do? That's, I think, the big thing that we're kind of truly looking for is, are we going to get that style of announcement? It feels like they have to do it eventually, but I don't think they are going to do it quite in that way. For whatever reason, I just don't think they quite see it that way. But the unique thing is obviously Avatar Studios. Like, Paramount are also making TMNT, but as far as I'm aware, like, there's no like TMNT Studios as such that is a specifically announced thing. It's just that Nickelodeon makes TMNT shows or whatever. Avatar is the one with a specific studio that's always framed as like it's its own separate thing. So what's going on here? What's the deal? Were we just trying to build some hype after 2020 by announcing this in 2021, or is there something more to this? I don't actually know. Because the real question is sort of like, when do they like, this is probably the big question here is this. Like, I find it kind of crazy that this hasn't already been done. We basically know they are working on it, but when are we actually going to get details on this? Whereas at least we have like enough details that most people are aware, I think, at this point, that there is an animated movie coming out, but series, it's a little bit more scattered. When are they going to confirm this? When are they going to confirm the second movie? And whatever the extra stuff that they're doing alongside that is. That's what we're really waiting for, I think. And this is going to be the real telling point of like, all of a sudden, like, the truth of like, that we've known for the whole time, but like they're like, oh yeah, oh wait, they actually are working on multiple things, and oh wait, they actually will manage to release 2 animated Avatar projects relatively close together. That's always been the dream. That's always been the plan with Avatar Studios. But do we actually believe it's going to happen? I'm not sure. That is the reality of it, is I'm not sure. There's so much uncertainty because there has been bad communication and nothing or anything like that. Let's try and find some of the kind of information that we do have. Okay, so if we look at this, yeah, so this is it's a bit off screen, but this is the Edelweiss listing for the Shadow of Kyoshi paperback version. In the key selling points here, slightly off screen, it says Hot Series, a brand new live action adaptation of Avatar is set to stream on Netflix in 2024. A new animated series from Avatar Studios featuring a brand new Avatar is currently in production and is set to release in 2025, which will set the perfect landscape for the continuation of our series. That's an interesting tagline. Now, they had this on the Roku book initially, and then basically I posted about it. Everyone freaked out about it. The next day, that was gone from that listing, but not gone from this listing. And it's like, did they remove it because it was wrong, or did they remove it because it was too early of an announcement? It's sort of unclear, because some of these marketing points are a little bit not correct, or they're based on other stuff. It's sort of unclear. But that seems pretty clear of like, okay, a new animated series. Like, it's a bit difficult to get wrong the idea of movie versus series. And then the idea of it has a new Avatar, which lines up with the Chronicles of the Avatar series, because, hey, we're effectively telling proper stories about the avatars you don't know that much about, while the series introduces a brand new avatar. That is a actually interesting marketing tagline to kind of make. So that's kind of interesting. The other thing that's relatively recent with Avatar Studios is, of course, the official website. We have the new description here, and you'll note that it says the division is designed to create original content spanning animated series and movies based off the beloved world of the two series. And it's like, okay, that is the most concrete ever mention that we are getting animated series. That's good to know. Also, when is this ever going to do anything? This whole thing. I assume most of us are signed up on the official website for the updates about Avatar. I think we've only ever got one. I think the only ever email they've sent out about Avatar is about Avatar in concert. Otherwise, I don't believe any information has ever been sent out via the email thing here. I get a lot of information about other Paramount movies, but not Avatar, unfortunately. So that's the thing here. So how much do we believe that? Obviously, the rumors from quite a few years ago at this point are that, yeah, the first series is going to be about the Avatar after Korra, which would make sense. And that would leave probably the spin-off series, the mini-series style stuff, short-form content to focus on other avatars, potentially. But that's where they probably need to tell us what the plan is. Like, is the Avatar Studios plan that we will expand Avatar and Korra with the movies, and then the series will be where we do our sort of new stuff properly, and we'll do other more experimental stuff in there as well as smaller projects? Is that the plan? And that's where, like, yeah, like we're kind of waiting for that first convention where they actually say something realistically. But is it too early? Because obviously at this point, the first is January 2026. So obviously, like, SDCC and New York Comic Con this year feel a little bit too early. SDCC next year is probably perfect if it stays in or around this date to properly give us information. Because we're probably expecting, like, I would say, like, CinemaCon 2025. That's going to be the major rollout, realistically. Where we get the key chunks of information on the movie is that stuff. So, like, what? February, March, July, October 2025. And then, even if we assume it maybe gets pushed a little bit beyond that, there's still, CinemaCon the following year, ahead of, like, release or whatever. But is this year a little bit too early? And then there's obviously the speculation about like, might they reverse things and do the series first and then the movie afterwards as the second project? Because that's the point. Is like launching with a movie is a kind of bit of a risky move for Avatar, which at least in terms of animated Avatar, like we don't have like the history of like being a known quantity in the cinema kind of space. I'm sure it'll do really well, but just the unknown is a bit of an odd one. But at least at this point, I think, you know, we have some actors. They finally gave us a working title. We're in around the situation. The question obviously is, will anything happen this year? The 2024 cons, is there any hope? I think there's room for like a little bit of an update, but anything big, I'm not really sure. Like I said, I think in my video, like Dante Bosco revealing that, hey, I'm playing Zuko in the movie, even though you already knew, is a possibility. Maybe them doing the Janet Varney, like, hey, you want some Avatar Studios news? Here's a little bit of information. Maybe. But otherwise, it's kind of unclear. And then, like, you have to remember, like, there is other stuff. Like, we know that there's, like, there's an Avatar fighting game coming out. There's the rumors that we had a few months ago about another kind of probably slightly more ambitious Avatar game. So that means, like, with the mobile game, Realms Collide, that's like 3, maybe 4 Avatar games that we're expecting to come out. There's room for some stuff to happen. And then like the forgotten news, I think, in the middle of all of this is the Jazzwares toy line coming in 2025. I think a lot of people are really underestimating the importance of this. That, like, this is Jazzwares don't just have like the license to make Avatar like action figures. It's they basically have the license to make everything Avatar. They are the master licensor for like Avatar merchandise now. This is going to be a full-on Avatar toy line, apparently coming in 2025. Maybe that moves a little bit to being like very much end of 2025, 2026 to coincide with the movie, but I'm guessing it's going to be in the months in the build-up to it. Because I'd be shocked if we're debuting with movie toys. So I'm guessing we are getting like an ATLA toy line. So that's interesting. And once they do this, once they commit to this, they have to have the stuff be there somewhere. Otherwise, like, because this is the thing, like what's the timing on this? Like, if let's say they drop this, like, say this time next year, the toy line comes out like July 2025. They have to put the stuff out like January, February. Like, you can't let the toy line exist on its own without the proper big backup. And you can't let it fail again. So, like, this is a major thing for, like, Paramount in terms of, like, this deal happened because Avatar is popular. This deal happened because Jazzwares obviously values Avatar as a franchise. There's probably built into this, but, like, hidden from the announcement is the idea that, like, we're going to be the licensor for the movie and new Avatar Studios stuff. But they're going to launch the toy line before then. This is the kind of make or break thing, effectively, a little bit. Because one of the big things that where they highlight that, say, like, TMNT doing so well, is that the movie did well, the toys are doing well, it's getting its series now, I think they're getting another movie, the merchandise is continuing to sell. We've never quite had that for Avatar. And we now potentially have the opportunity for that to happen here, with Jazzwares like being like, yeah, we want to go big on Avatar with the merch. And I know most people aren't super into the merch in the same way that like I am. Some people are, but the merch is probably one of the more telling things to happen, in the sense that, is anyone going to be surprised if we get like reveals about like animated series, reveals about the movie, maybe through merchandise potentially? And that's the big thing that we've not had to deal with like basically ever, because Korra effectively had no merchandise, so it didn't have any ability for stuff to be spoiled through merchandise. And that's partly, I think, why Nickelodeon maybe treated it the way it did, because there just wasn't anything to fully get them behind it. So, you know, we're getting there. That's the big thing here, is that we are getting there with this stuff. Like, I look forward to a year where theoretically, like, I can't do the coverage I'm planning to do on the novel that comes out that year. I look forward to, oh, it's like Karuk novel number 2, but I can't do a video on every chapter because we're getting teasers for the new movie. We're getting teasers for the new series. More comics are coming out than usual. That sort of thing. So I have to be like, oh, we can only cover the new novel like a little bit, or like, I'm still going to do a good amount of coverage, but like we can't do like everything on it. That's going to be kind of exciting, ultimately, in my opinion. Where like the 1 or 2 publishing releases of the year don't have to be everything for the year. It's interesting, because like it really highlights that we had some good stuff going when Korra was coming out, because that was a huge time for the fandom, because Korra Book 1 had so much hype behind it, and we were getting like the early Avatar comic trilogies at the same time, which were doing a lot of big things in the story. So like they were really going for it there. And the idea is that was a hugely busy time for the franchise, that like we were getting big comics along with Korra, and we're gonna get that like ×2, ×3 in a year or two. That's the hope anyway. Will Dark Horse be able to do it? Maybe. Who knows? Because you'd almost want to hope that maybe Dark Horse are not doing so great right now, maybe because they're already in the early stages of planning comic series that will line up, coincide with the new stuff. Because that's the thing, is like it's basically the sort of like comic limitations. Like, are they actually only able to do like ATLA and Korra? Like, this is the sort of stuff that we actually don't know when it comes to the franchise. Like, whatever deal Dark Horse have with licensing for Avatar, like, are they allowed to do a Kyoshi comic, for instance, if they wanted to? As in, not a story where, like, Aang communicates with Kyoshi, but, like, no. It's, like, as in, like, a follow-up to the novels. Can they just be, it's set in the Kyoshi era, it doesn't involve any Avatar, any Korra characters, it's just a Kyoshi novel. Are the comics allowed to do that? And I suppose vice versa, of, like, are the novels, is it in any way a thing where it's, like, a possibility that we could get, like, a Korra novel, or an Aang novel? Because I think the comics have such an open landscape to work with if they were able to do like one shots for like Rangi, like these type of characters. Like, imagine these characters getting comics. That's what we're kind of looking for, I think, at this point. Because Korra getting one shots is a brand new thing, but it does feel like Avatar, they're going to run out of like especially if they are super limited in like where they can go in the timeline. Like maybe the movie coming out will open the door, and actually the comics are now able to. You can do a one shot about older Aang. You can do a one shot about older Katara. That sort of thing happens. That's good. But if they're still fundamentally limited to post-imbalance timeline and before then, I kind of would prefer that they find some open space to do some kind of really new feeling comics. But I don't know what the situation is. That's the unfortunate kind of challenge on that side of things. How big of a relationship Dark Horse has with Avatar Studios? Yeah, that is a big question, because you think the relationship should be like really good, because this is their first, it's their first, in a way, their most significant like kind of publishing relationship that they have, because we're into what year I suppose it's like year 13, 14 of that, because like Dark Horse, like the first thing that they did was like, was it the art book first, or was it Lost Adventures first? I forget. Either way, it's like 13, 14 years for those books. Then the trilogy comics. And like the fact that Dark Horse Comics were allowed to do the Search story, I think is a huge thing. I think a lot of people maybe don't realize how significant that is, that like the Zuko's mom story like happened in the comics under Dark Horse is like really, really important. I hope it is just that Avatar Studios came into play, absolutely destroyed a lot of ideas that Dark Horse had, as in maybe early stages of the next Avatar trilogy. They clearly had a Korra trilogy that was probably, like, I'd love to know if any art got done on the Korra trilogy, because it felt like they were just about to announce that. We definitely, because of Avatar Studios, lost one Korra comic trilogy, and likely a bunch of other stuff. Beast of the Four Nations is probably included in that as well. If we ever get that book, I can't really see a reason why they maybe are doing that. The only thing I can think of is that, do they want to release an animal encyclopedia like right before they start introducing more Avatar animals? But they need to communicate about it. Because I think like consistently these days the novels are definitely on a better level than the comics. The comics, just that decision feels so weird. Obviously the novels haven't, I guess, been affected at all. Wait, they cancelled a third Korra comic trilogy? Yeah, basically. Like I'd have to go back to my videos and check and stuff like that. But like we definitely have like evidence from like interviews that like the editor of like the Avatar and Korra stuff at the time did, where prior to Avatar Studios, at the timing like post Ruins of the Empire and stuff like that, they had a big announcement of like, there will be stuff for Avatar and Korra comic fans that they will really like coming up soon. There's definitely certainly mentions of like, there's a Korra trilogy that we have coming up, and it was basically like, yeah, it's probably going to be announced soon, and that just disappeared. That trilogy is absolutely not the one-shot trilogy that we're talking about now, because I don't think Alexandria Monique was involved at the time, different writers and stuff like that. So you know, maybe there's arguments to be said for like what it was or wasn't that there was, but I think very clearly they got, I think, relatively far in the planning stages on the next Korra comic trilogy and had to scrap it because Avatar Studios came into play. I could probably find some of this stuff eventually, but again, we are going back like 4 or 5 years at this point to it. But I definitely on the channel remember reporting quite heavily on interviews with like Rachel Roberts, where she said stuff like this, and we were waiting for a trilogy, and then the big announcement came of like, we're switching to one shots. But is that just Avatar comics, or does it affect Korra? And is the reason we're only just getting Korra comics back going at this point, and all this sort of stuff. It's an odd situation. Again, it's one of those things where they never confirmed another Korra comic trilogy is coming, but it was very much the case of like continuing as normal. There's another Korra comic coming out, surely, isn't there? And we don't know what happened to it, because like that's the question, is like, what happened to the creative team on Ruins of the Empire? Like, I don't think we have much evidence really suggesting that team had issues with production like maybe certain other creators. And why did they kind of leave? Like Michelle Wong, why isn't Michelle Wong still the Korra artist is a bit of a question. And it's just that clear idea of the timing of everything. Avatar Studios happening clearly, I guess, made Dark Horse have to change a lot of ideas they had in place. Because then you ask yourself, like, what's the deal with the Chibi comic? Like, what on earth happened to the Chibi comic? Because that thing is like, weirdly, for whatever reason, one of the most delayed comics ever. Even though it was clearly done like a really long time ago. It was clearly initially scheduled, like solicited and stuff like that, as being a volume 1, suggesting they had a volume 2 planned. And I'm guessing that's one of those things where like that book was done, deals were made, it was going to happen. But again, did Avatar Studios come in, affect that? Or did they just accept that this is a bit of a failed experiment as a different type of comic? Just the fact that we ultimately never heard anything about they're actually going to do a second Chibi comic is kind of notable. And yeah, we're just in one-shot territory for the comics now going forward. With just the hope that one of these days at one of these conventions they're going to announce something that's a little bit more interesting for the comics. But it might not be the year for that, ultimately. So, yeah, at this point, I guess I'm going to put out the call for any final questions, any final things you guys want me to talk about on this stream. Otherwise, it's probably about time to wrap it up. As I said before, with the Roku novel, my plan is to do the same style of coverage I've done for all of the other novels. So you will see a non-spoiler review when I read the book. You will see a spoiler review, hopefully shortly after the non-spoiler review. And then I will start chapter analysis videos, which will be hopefully one video on every individual chapter in The Reckoning of Roku, all the way up to the end, so that we can cover everything in as much detail as possible. Of course, this will be spread out across quite a few weeks because there is a lot of stuff to talk about. But anyway, that's the plan for Roku. We're 18 days away at this point. It's looking like, yeah, it probably will only start day of release, but that's fine. That's when most people are going to start reading the book. I think ultimately it will be a relatively small amount of the fandom that gets the book early. Let's see. Which novel do you think has added the most to the lore? Like it probably has to be like one of the two Kyoshi novels. Like I think The Rise of Kyoshi is always going to be a significant novel because it's the first time we ever got Avatar in novel format, and just it felt like in those early chapters, every sentence is like a massive lore dump, and it's like this is the way the Earth Kingdom find their avatars. Like, wait, this is Kyoshi's like airbending master. Wait, there's a false avatar. Like every single thing in that book just felt like this is all completely new, brand new. We are not used to getting stories like this, and it feels like everything is like just like this is the era. This is the Kyoshi era, because again, it was the debut of the Kyoshi era before the RPG gave us like a foundation in it. It was really, really huge. You can maybe make the argument that like the Shadow technically have more lore because it covers Kyoshi stuff. It has Karuk's backstory, and it also has like a pretty big like just general world building thing on like say Fire Nation and like the clans and stuff like that. And that is one thing I think the fandom was really latched onto. People love that whole Fire Nation clan thing. People want more with that. I think people really would love some sort of a book that just explains what all the Fire Nation clans are of that era, or in or around that era, and what the deal is with all of them. But it maybe didn't go into detail enough. But I think it's very clearly Rise of Kyoshi that is the most kind of lore kind of heavy overall. But I think just in general, the novels are lore heavy. Like, even when we went through the new stuff we have here, we got like 40-something pages of content. There's quite a bit in here. In this case, it might be the case that because we have the RPG on the Roku era beforehand, there might not be as many lore reveals, but there's still some very cool stuff in this. Like, where's the other part? About the catacombs and stuff like that. Is it earlier on? I think it's earlier on, isn't it? Yeah, this one. Yeah. This yeah, like this is crazy. Like oh, Sozin and friends read ancient text and discovered like the power of flight, learned about the power of flight, distant target explode, blue fire, channel lightning. Share the link. Let's see, share the link. It's basically it's Amazon.com, Roku product listing, sample link. I'll try and put the link in chat quick. Roku copy. Ooh, this is okay. This link is a little too long. Okay, let me get rid of all this weird stuff at the end. Okay, it still goes to the same place. Okay. There, and then you just have to click the read sample button underneath the page. Let's see, so we go to here. Yeah, just, it's a bit off my screen here, but you can roughly see that like there's a button here underneath the page. This is the read sample button to get you there. So there's that. And you if you go back and watch the whole stream, you can see all the pages that I have. It seems like everyone maybe gets different pages. You might have access to a chapter I don't have access to. I might have access to a chapter you don't have access to. That's just the nature of these previews. Let's see. Another question here. Do I think they'll do Karuk novels after the Roku ones? That's the big question. Where's my phone, actually, to check this on mobile? Okay, so let's assume they do. There'll be Roku Book 2. So, Chronicles of the Avatar 7. What's it going to be? Karuk feels the most obvious because it'll sell, because people know Karuk from the show. People are going to know Karuk now and know more about Karuk from Netflix Avatar. So that's kind of another interesting factor in this as well with Karuk. There's clearly stories you can tell with Karuk when he's a teenager. And I don't think it is necessarily the case where it's just like, okay, we told the key backstory with Karuk in the Kyoshi novels, and that's all we need. So, and then because he is one of Aang's like prior avatars, like it feels like they should do that. A lot depends on that. Like, are they stuck on they have to do 2 books? Maybe Karuk is one where you do 1 book and it just is a nice thing, especially because you're going to have a very strong Kyoshi connection with that book, because his team Avatar is main characters from the Kyoshi novels. Like Jeonju's going to be there, Heiron, Kelsong, they're all going to be there. Yeah, on mobile, I don't seem to have access to the preview. I'm not sure what the situation is actually there. Maybe you have to use the app. I'm not sure. Yeah, for whatever reason, the sample link isn't here. Unless I'm obviously missing something. Yeah, not sure what the situation is there. Was there on desktop? Might be app. You might have to change region to America to make sure it's the .com, but that might be possible. But yeah, they either have to do Karuk, and then the question is obviously if they don't do Karuk, who do they do? Zito makes sense, but would they do 2 fire avatars in a row? I don't think so. Even if they are very, very different, separated by like a huge amount of time and stuff like that, I don't think they do that. And then you're in a weird situation where, well, I don't think you're immediately going back and doing another Kyoshi novel or another Yang Chen novel. I don't necessarily think you're doing an Aang novel or a Korra novel. I'd be surprised. I'd really like it though if they did a Wan novel, but is that going to happen? Who knows? Meaning you're in the territory where you have to do a new avatar, like brand new era. You have to do Avatar Salai, Avatar Gun, or someone new that we don't really know. So I don't know. Karuk gets us maybe as far as Chronicles of the Avatar 8. I'm assuming they probably want to go to at least 10. Did they just leave it at like Owen will throw Zito in on the end because he is the Avatar, like the extra one kind of after that. I'm not sure. I would love to see the novels be able to do their own Avatar and not like have it, not like be required to be based on like, here's a little bit that we got there either. So do you think there will be new Funko Pops for the movie coming in 2026 or sooner? The only information we've had on new Funko Pops is obviously they have those, what do they call them, Bitty Pops. They're either out or are coming out very soon. None of those I think are new molds though. They're just smaller versions of what we already have. The only new like leaks or rumors on Funko Pops is from a few months ago. There was a suggestion they're going to be these deluxe pops, I think covering, what was it, Aang, Katara, Zuko, Toph, I think. But we haven't heard anything else about them. My guess is that yes, because there is going to be likely a full merch line in place by the time the movie comes out, I'm assuming a lot of other places with bits and pieces of the Avatar license will have stuff ready to go with the movie. And Funko Pops just happen for everything, it seems like. And because they've already done like quite a lot of Avatar, like we've got a wave of Korra, we've effectively had like what, 3-ish waves of Avatar Funko Pops. I'd be surprised if we didn't get movie Avatar Funko Pops. So I think that's a guarantee. Will we get any other ones? I'm not sure necessarily, because I'm assuming a lot of places with the license are probably already maybe working with Avatar Studios to make that stuff happen, so they're ready for whenever the movie actually comes out. Let's see, another question. Favorite new piece of lore over the last 5 years? Oh, that's a tough one. So 5 years. So this is basically since the novels. Favorite new piece of lore. Like, it probably just is the basic premise for Rise of Kyoshi. The idea that Kyoshi's story as the Avatar is that she was not originally discovered as the Avatar. It took this event happening. Basically, I suppose the lore is false Avatar Yoon is to me, maybe the most interesting piece of lore. That's how the Kyoshi era is sort of like defined to a certain degree. Like, I think we actually have it here from the preview a little bit. Let's cover what the book has to say about this. So that will be in the next chapter, I think. Yeah. Here we go. Yeah. The story of Roku's predecessor was an anomaly. The Earth Kingdom had identified a powerful earthbender of humble origins named Yoon, but they'd gotten it wrong. The real Avatar turned out to be Yoon's maid, Kyoshi. Kyoshi would go on to become one of the greatest Avatars in history, living for over 200 years, while Yoon would go on to forever be known as the false Avatar who descended into madness. I think just that premise that we couldn't have possibly predicted ahead of time is, broadly speaking, the kind of the thing that I think is very defining of, like, they really blew us away with those, like the first novels there, with how impactful that piece of information is. Otherwise, it's hard to pick a more specific, like, piece of lore that's come out. Maybe also related to Yoon, but like the idea that another way to merge with a spirit is to defeat a spirit so that they're small enough to eat them, and that way you can contain their powers without the spirit like morphing you. I think that as like another way of spirit enhancement is actually a really cool reveal to get. Because I like the spirit stuff. I like the spirit mechanic stuff. So the way Yoon gained his kind of glowworm powers, I thought was actually a really cool piece of information. Definitely like that. Otherwise, anything. Yeah, probably some of that stuff. I think I just think like the core points that those first two novels like latched onto, I thought were just really, really strong. Uh, let's see. I'm thinking they do 4 people in this cycle and then do another cycle earlier. Yeah, that is the other point of like, yeah, they probably will do it that way. Because like, yeah, we've had what we started with Earth, then we went to air, now we're fire, water. Like, would they break the cycle of books? Like, if they're continuing Chronicles of the Avatar, are they going to break the cycle? I don't think so. So either way, it feels like Water Avatar has to be next. And yeah, there's room for Karuk. Karuk probably has to be next. Otherwise, you do that character for sure. Otherwise, yeah, the Water Avatar before Karuk is basically a character we don't know anything about, unless they reveal it's Avatar Gun, but we don't really know what the situation is there. Though there is the image from Heart of a Hero, which just is like a random 2023 2024 piece of art that happens to showcase that avatar and the Earth avatar who may or may not be Salai. So you sort of wonder about like, when are they going to introduce the other avatars, because you're going to need to do that at a certain point. Do you think Wong could be in the running? Probably not next, because he's technically a fire avatar based on the cycle, isn't he? So we probably don't come back around to him for a while. But yeah, I think Karuk probably is the obvious one to do next. I suppose the question is like, because we've already got like the big event in his life, we've got a recappy montage style thing of the early days of him and his team. You're obviously going to maybe focus in on, here's one of the missions, here's 2 of the missions across 2 books. How do you make it like super interesting, and like what is the core dynamic that isn't just kind of fleshing out the stuff that we already know and feels more unique? Because I think people are going to want to go back to see like Jeonju again, Kelsang again. That's certainly interesting, but like, in a way, is the plot going to be interesting enough? Is probably the question on the Karuk side of things. And then yeah, the Umi story, that's another thing. The only problem with the Umi story is that we don't yet have evidence that the novels are willing to tell a story about an avatar as an adult. They're willing to do it in flashback as like a past avatar talking to the young avatar, but like, are we just okay with like, we'll tell the Umi story, it'll be 30-year-old Karuk as the character in the book? I want them to be able to do that, because I think it's going to get a little bit tiring always having to have these Chronicles of the Avatar books be 16, 17, 18-year-old, whoever the character is. Like, depending on how this book ends, we might even be feeling that way as well. It's like, given how much room there is to tell stories in Roku's era, like based off the RPG, which is 12 years later, have us meet the next member of his team Avatar, Taokukak. That's going to happen 4 years later. Are they willing to do that? I'm assuming 20-year-old Roku is on the table, but that's a bit of a problem. Do you think they might do a retelling of Aang or Korra in Chronicles of the Avatar books, or later in their lives? there's always a possibility. My guess is because they are such notable characters who already have a series, and because very, very likely already is the case with Avatar, they're getting movies with Avatar Studios. There's no real, I think, need to get a novel about Aang when we already have comics, the show, movie, likely multiple movies, and probably the same with Korra. Now, maybe, depending on where we go, maybe Korra could end up using a novel. Depends on how quickly we get another Korra project. If they announce one of the movies as being Korra, or Korra gets another series, we may end up having to do a novel about Korra if they're not going to commit to that, but we don't know what the situation is there. My guess, and I think what they've done so far, is the novels have been the place to tell the stories of the avatars we know a bit about, but not everything about. And those main series characters don't necessarily fit here at the moment, I think, is probably the idea. So, yeah, I can't really see Aang or Korra getting the focus here, especially when Aang has the movie coming out. So there's that. But definitely the question comes up, I suppose, is just like other novels. Like, do we always have to be focused on the avatars? Can we do anything else with the novels? That would be a cool option. But yeah. So yeah, probably gonna wrap up the stream there then. We've been going quite a while here. Obviously, for anyone who maybe came in later, basically the second I end the stream, it's going to go up as a video on demand, so you will be able to kind of go back, watch it from the start, to go back and like see the pages, especially if I have maybe pages that you don't have. You could see the whole thing pretty much as soon as I end it here, because like we pretty much jump into it straight away and go through it. Let's see, did I read through it? Basically, like, key sections I read through. Other sections where it's mostly just like a description, I maybe just skimmed over, but you could see it on screen. I didn't do the full-on like attempt to be the audiobook narrator style thing for the whole thing, but you know, I highlighted key points, basically. We spent quite a while going through it, ultimately, so it should be able to read along with the whole thing. I skipped over this chapter because like which is it? Yeah, this chapter is just the Screen Rant article in full. I think I completely skipped past it because we already had it. Other than that, that's that. But yeah, thanks to everyone for coming out to the stream. Next stream, I don't know when it's going to be. I'm guessing it will be sometime in August, probably, to maybe do a stream talking about Roku novel, like kind of in review with the chat. Maybe later in August, just to give everyone as much time as possible to read through the book, because I'll be doing so many videos on it. It might be I don't want to rush to that stream when there's so much else to do. Actually, now that I'm forgetting, next stream might be like after Comic-Con. So maybe at the end of the month, if SDCC has enough news to talk about, definitely we'll come on and discuss that. But that pretty much depends on if there is an announcement. If there's no real news, there probably won't be a stream. If there is, we'll talk about it. But yeah, otherwise, just check out the channel for videos and news and stuff like that. So thanks for everyone to coming out, and that has been the stream. Thanks for watching, and bye.